So we are now live. Tarkus, did you want to introduce yourself or did you want me to introduce you?
You give me an intro and I'll tell you if it's good or not.
Oh man, the pressure's on. So
Hell yeah.
Tarkus is a Victoria 3 YouTuber, but I would say primarily CK3 YouTuber that creates narratives generally focused on a storyline that proceeds from a central theme or family in the case of Crusader Kings, and that this is his primary content, that he is producing and putting out on
Mm.
YouTube. You're still primarily CK, right? Or would you say
Yeah,
you're more
well,
Vic 3 now?
just right now, I'm pretty hard into Vic 3 because CK3 is like dead on content. But I just whatever of the games has like a new DLC kind of becomes the main for a bit. But I go based off what if I'm bored by a game, I don't really make content for it because otherwise it's like shit content. So right now I'm just bored of CK3, so I play Vic 3.
That's fair.
But yeah,
Is there a specific
go ahead.
or is there a specific reason that you are finding CK boring right now?
Just like Roads to Power was really good. I played it for like literally hundreds of hours, and then no matter how good a DLC is, that's a long time to
Yeah.
play a game. So I just kind of like, yeah, I'm ready to do something else. Like even right now, I'm getting a bit bored of Vic 3, but I got one more project I have in mind, and then I kind of want go to like I don't know. I think it may be EU4 actually for the next era, but it'll depend when the DLCs come out.
U4 is kind of a nice one because it's like finished
Hmm.
in
Yeah,
some
it is.
sense.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you actually started out. Your initial content was actually speedrunning CK,
that's right.
and you
Yes,
had the world record for fastest single session, all
yeah.
achievements. Right?
Dude,
Do you
you
still
did
hold
your
that?
research. I do still hold that. I'm the only person to have ever done it. It was world's
Okay.
first world record, and no one's ever challenged it. So I understand why it took like fucking 30 hours. So
Yeah.
sorry, my screen's gonna keep moving because my cat keeps hitting my monitor and my camera's.
No, that's okay. It's a
Yeah,
podcast, so it doesn't count.
yeah,
Also, like
yeah,
with cats, like
yeah.
chat never
True.
gets mad at the
I
cat.
just got this cat. I just got this cat a couple days ago, so
Oh,
she's still getting
can
used
you
to the
show
house.
cat,
Yeah.
or does she not like getting picked up?
Well, right now she just got spayed, so she's a little bit sensitive to being picked up. She's
Okay, fair.
behind the
Don't
monitor.
grab
I
her.
don't
No,
really
no,
want
no,
to
no,
grab
no.
her, but
Don't
she,
grab her.
but if I know her, she's gonna walk on my keyboard in a little bit. So
Okay, fair.
she'll end up here
Yeah,
eventually. So,
the people who like stress their pets out for content, I'm like not about
no,
that.
like that.
There's
Yeah.
there's this guy who does the thing where he like sings with his cat and his cat claws him and
Mm.
it's like, oh, it's funny
Oh,
because the cat
Jesus.
hates the singing. But if you like look closely, he's actually like pulling on the cat's tail to make the cat
Ooh.
attack him. And like I just like his videos
Yeah, that's
pop
not
off
good.
or whatever, but I like report them every time they pop up in my feed or whatever.
Yeah, I
It's
do not
like,
approve. Let the record be said here. I do not approve of abusing animals for content.
yeah,
In case it wasn't,
yeah.
obvious. I don't know. Same goes for like family stuff. There are some parents who will like. You ever seen the? I know this is totally off topic, so we'll get to Victoria
No,
pretty
it's
soon.
fine. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you ever see those like family channels like prank quote unquote their kids, and it's like the most disgusting shit I've ever seen.
Yeah.
That stuff
I'm
is
pranking
like,
the
yeah,
parents. I'm more okay with, but like,
yeah, but pranking
the
the kids is pretty
yeah,
bad.
because the kids don't have a way out. The parents can
Mhm.
always, put their kids up for adoption. So
True,
they
so
could always
true.
escape the situation
Yeah, they have it
if
out.
it gets out of hand.
Yeah.
That's a joke. We joke around
Mhm.
here.
That
Uh,
was hilarious, journalist. You're so funny.
I'm and handsome.
That's right.
Yes, the sarcasm is palpable.
Oh yeah.
The do you think so regarding speedrunning, what do you think
Mm,
made you transition off of speedrunning? Was it just
mm,
it's more fun to not speedrun and it's also like speedrunning is also just like difficult?
mm. Yeah. Well, in the case of CK3, I stopped speedrunning because I kind of did like the greatest thing ever, and then I was like, wow, I
Yeah.
don't know how to follow this up, so I'm just
Yeah.
gonna retire. Like it would be like if you had like I don't know much about like most sports, but it'd be like if you were like a soccer player and
Yeah.
you like won like every World Cup in your entire career, and I was just like, what the fuck do I do now? It's like I'm just gonna retire, even if you're only like 30 maybe, because soccer players usually play till they're about 40 if
Uh-huh.
they're like having a good career. But imagine if you won like three World Cups or some shit by the time you're like 30. You're just like, okay, I don't know how to follow this up.
Yeah.
I did the all achievement speed run. I did like three times, like progressively getting better and better, and with more and more achievements and more and more DLCs. And then I was like, oh man, I'm kind of done with this now. I can't do anymore. When I came to Vic 3 speedrunning is a lot less fun than CK3 because so much of Vic
Okay.
3 is like waiting. So with CK3, it's a lot more kinetic, at least in terms of like just you're always doing stuff. In Vic 3, though, it's like, yes, the strategy is I'm going to queue up these exact buildings and then hope the RNG is right and then do some funny naval landings. That's like
The
all the strategies for Vic 3 speedrunning. So it's like, all right, well, whatever.
there's like a lot of like really weird like edge loading, reloading, and
Yes, exactly.
manipulating like IGs and like this type of stuff that
Mm,
allows you to do like really crazy stuff politically if you like
mm,
want to sweat for like 2 hours and get like 1 year of
exactly.
game time. Um, which I don't do a lot of that stuff, which is why I often say my
Yeah.
like runs aren't optimized because
Hmm.
it's like you can sweat for 2 hours and then it's like it's an understanding of this like little intricate type of system that like um, it actually kind of ties in with the topic, which is we're trying to talk mostly about narrative. Is like
Well, good.
I think like exploiting like the really weird edge cases is like less themey and like
Hmm.
more about a really precise execution of like a game rather than like fitting with the theme of grand strategy. And at that point, I'd rather play a game that feels more tactical than Vic 3, like in general. Um,
Yeah. No, I think you're totally right about that. When it comes to my enjoyment of these grand strategy games, like EU4, CK3, Vic 3, all of them, for me the biggest joy comes from the narrative of the game
mhm.
usually. Like even in EU4, which is a pretty technical game, I will say. I've got almost 3,000 hours in it, so like I'm just exiting the tutorial stage of the game at this
Yeah,
point, and I still find myself kind of focusing a lot more on like, oh, what's the story of the country? I'll pick government reforms more based on like what sounds cool for the narrative versus what's actually good.
yeah.
And Vic 3, I think, is kind of poorly suited to that. Like, not that I mean, it's up to your creativity, but in Vic 3, you don't have a lot of choices that can like give you a sense of narrative, but you can make shit up in your head, which is mostly what I always do.
Hmm.
Like, I just, even for example, when I might pass like a law, like laissez-faire, for example, I'll think of it as like a bill, it gets like
Hmm.
sweeping reform and stuff like that. Whereas in Victoria 3, like, there's no nuance to laws that are in the sense of how they implement it across different countries. It's all kind of just the same, right?
Yeah, the in Vic yeah in Vic 3 there's a lot of like sameness, and I mean
Yeah.
I yeah I try and play relatively meta despite like
Mm.
what I just
Yeah.
said regarding like not wanting to squeeze everything out, which means it
Mhm.
like very often it doesn't feel like there's like a lot of different texture between runs, but there are like some tools in Victoria 3 for like
Mhm.
narrative a little bit, or at least something upon which you can like hang a narrative on top. Like agitators, for example,
Mhm.
are a decent one. You recently did a run where you played as Karl Marx, I believe, or
Yeah.
you didn't play as Karl Marx, but you got Karl Marx on the throne
Yeah.
as Great Britain
Yeah.
as the
Yeah.
monarch, right? So,
Yeah.
how in
That
general
was
do you
fun.
feel about agitators as like a tool to create narratives?
Well, I mean, obviously, they're one of Victoria 3's kind of only tools to create truly creative narratives.
Yeah.
The problem is that like the it's you have to make a lot of shit up in your head to justify why a random agitator comes over. For example, I got a comment on that Marx video. One agitator I invited when I was trying to do like a republic was I
Hmm.
invited some random Argentinian like caudillo who wants a republic.
Yeah.
And one guy commented like that's hilarious to imagine like some random Argentinian general just like arriving in Britain and
Yeah.
successfully agitating for a republic. And it's like, yeah, that is really strange. And I didn't really like in the video. I just said like an agitator arrived, and I realized
Yeah.
afterwards it was some famous historical Argentinian general. And I'm like, I can't think of any reason why that would happen. Whereas in something like EU4, CK3, there's a bit more of the game's own justification for things happening. In Vic 3, it's like, bro, just anyone can just go to any country, like anytime for no reason. Like they don't have to want to go there. You just
Yeah.
have to invite them over. And there's
That's
ups and
true.
downs to that. There's freedom in a lack of need to justify in-game what you do. For example, like in EU4, if you want to be like a mercenary country, your best bet is going to always be Switzerland because they have the reforms that are
Hmm.
unique to their country to get like mercenary modifiers. But what if you wanted to do like mercenary England? Like, well, you're shit out of luck. Like you just, you can try. You'll never be as good as Switzerland, and you can do it for the memes. So there's less and more freedom in a way. There's less freedom gameplay wise, but more freedom choices. In Vic 3, there's like infinite freedom, but in that infinite freedom, there's kind of like very little freedom because nothing makes any sense unless you just make shit up in your head, which is mostly what I do in Vic 3. I just say random crap in the script and then it sounds cool, so we go with it.
Yeah, the in EU4, can you like focus on? It's been a while since I've played, but like I feel like you can focus on gold too, and
Yep.
then like you go mercenaries because you have a ton of gold, and so like there's
Yep.
kind of some other axes, but
Well, for sure, yeah. I just mean in the sense of like if you wanted to be the most mercenary pilled that you
yeah,
can be, then you have to be something like Switzerland or even like Burgundy. I think gets some mercenary modifiers. I forget. I haven't played most of these countries, but just like you you will always be limited by the nature of the country you're playing. Although to be fair, you can as England tag switch to Switzerland, but then you're just playing Switzerland. So
yeah.
it's like yeah,
No,
you can get really creative, but
the EU4 tag switches are a slightly
mhm,
immersive breaking, in my opinion, from the narrative
yeah,
perspective.
mhm,
It's like
they
everyone
can be.
remembers when England became Switzerland.
Yeah, yeah. I did a run a long time ago on my YouTube channel where I was playing Castile, and I
Hmm.
went from like Castile to like Germany, which is
Makes
like
sense.
obviously a random journey. But I in the justification in the story was during the League Wars, which is like like when
Yeah.
Protestants and Catholics were like murdering each other for over like random bullshit. I like annexed the entire HRE, and that was like a big shift in
Yeah.
the Spanish politics away from Spain towards Germany, right? That kind of thing.
To be fair, if
Uh,
you're
Yeah.
Habsburg Spain, then it actually does make a lot
Yeah.
of sense to become
Unfortunately, I
Germany.
don't think I was. Unfortunately, if I was, that actually would have been really smart. Now I gotta go redo that video where I get a
Oh
Habsburg
damn!
heir.
You said
But
you
I
wanted to play
think I was
EU4.
just, yeah. I mean, the thing is, I kind of want to play the Anbinar mod for EU4. I don't know if
Oh
you know
no.
it, but
Yeah.
yeah,
What's
there's like a big fantasy overhaul mod for EU4 that's
so
really, really,
like?
really, really good.
Is there an EU4 you do this for content meta? Because there's a content meta for
Mm,
Vic 3. There's content meta for CK.
yeah.
Do you know if there's like you do this country you get views for
It's
EU4?
probably Prussia. It's
Prussia.
probably just Prussia. Yeah,
Oh
that's
man.
the big one.
Is it really just kind of
Yeah.
semi Prussia for all of them? Because I know Boho
Well,
is CK.
the thing is, I'll say I don't actually know the EU4 meta that well, like in terms of the content, because when I did EU4 content, it was when I was kind of looking to do some fun. So I just did whatever, and I got kind of lucky. I got like some pretty acceptable views on my EU4 videos, and I did the thing where you call them guides, but they're not really guides. I have a
Strong.
I say bad habit. It's an effective habit. It just every time I do
Yeah.
things that are like whenever I brand things as stories, they just don't do as well. So I'm like, okay, these all have to be guides, but sometimes I don't feel like doing that. So for example, some CK3 videos are just stories. Regardless of back to EU4, the meta to me anyway, I just determine it based on what like guys like Red Hawk and Lathe and Ludi are doing because they're like the big ones. I don't like I never copy anyone wholesale, but like I might see okay, there's a trend towards like this and this, right? Like
Right.
right now in CK3, Lathe did a couple videos where he was just like playing tall in CK3, which to me is like one of the most boring ways to ever play the game. To be honest, like I'm sorry, but it really really performs well. He did an Iceland video, like it was like probably in terms of the obviously Lathe's entertaining, so it wasn't a boring
Yeah.
video. But in
I'm
terms
like,
of playing the game as Iceland and just raiding, it's like the most mind-numbing shit you could ever do. But people love it, and I don't really get why. But I don't have the
it's because they don't want
like
to do the rating
1,000 hour player.
themselves.
Yeah, it's almost like you get the satisfaction of burning Europe down, but you don't have to burn Europe down, which is a lot of
Yeah.
micro. You got to click a lot to do all that rating. So it could be that. I think it's also a matter of like when you're a new player to CK3, you don't realize kind of what's special and what's not. It's not very special to like raid. Like it's
Yeah.
one of the just like more kind of basic mechanics in the game. It's a lot more special to like form custom kingdoms and make divergent cultures and stack all
Yeah.
these interesting cultural traditions. But it's harder to explain that in a video title. Whereas like I played Tall in Iceland and Burned Down Europe is really easy to explain.
That is
So
easy to
that's
explain.
kind of the problem.
The I also hate rating in CK, but I'm not like
Yeah.
I'm like a 500 hour Andy or something like with CK.
Yeah.
It's like it's not
Mhm.
I don't have the same level of knowledge. So in Vic 3,
Mhm.
oh cat cam, let's
Yeah, she's
go.
here. She's here. She's got a cone on right now because she just got spayed, but yeah, there she is.
Meow meow
Meow. Oh, she moved her head when I meowed.
meow. She
I
can't
don't know
hear
if
me
she's
because you
hearing
have
you or not. I
headphones.
don't think
Yeah,
I don't
that's
think she can
like
hear you. Oh,
Chad
she's
hears
clicking
me.
buttons on. Hold on, she's clicking keys. She wanted me to create my own server. What are you doing, kitty?
Meow.
Okay, she's now lying down on the
She's doing
keyboard.
whatever she wants.
Yeah.
Classic cat
No,
stuff.
I let her do what she wants. I don't disrupt her when she's in the mood for
Tarkus is
being
typing,
on the
yeah.
keyboard.
Do be typing
And
sometimes.
she's just hitting buttons. Okay, she's leaving now.
Yeah.
Well,
Meow.
kind of. I don't know. She's like undecided if she's leaving or not. She's trying to scratch herself because she has the cone on 'cause she got spayed. So she's
Yeah.
kind of like unsuccessfully trying to scratch herself.
That's got to be so frustrating.
I bet. Yeah. I feel bad about it, but it's for their own good.
No, yeah, yeah. It's so they don't pull out their stitches, which are itchy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The for Victoria 3, one of the other like things you can form a narrative around is
Mhm.
journal entries. And I
Yes.
have like
Yeah.
kind of two parts to this, but like the first part is
Mhm.
like, how do you feel that journal entries compare to like, let's say, the
Mhm.
narrative suite that you get from CK in terms of
Mhm.
Vic 3's journal entries?
I've softened up on journal entries. I used to be very, very anti-journal entry because I see it as just like total like railroading.
Hmm.
But I've kind of softened up. I think that journal entries can be interesting when they give meaningful modifiers. One thing I really don't like is when the modifier is some shit like plus 50% loyalists from, political movements. Like, dog,
The worst.
who the
That's the worst
who
modifier
cares?
ever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
who the hell who cares, bro? But sometimes you get ones that are, for example, when you do stuff like the explosives one where you can get the massive throughput bonus on your mines.
Hmm.
To me, there is narrative power to that if you're going to be creative in your own head, where you could be like, yeah, some. I'm thinking of some. Now I'm thinking of like a YouTube script. Like some inventor. Let's say I'm playing Japan, and I'll make up like I'll Google
Yeah.
famous Japanese inventors or whatever from the Meiji era, and be like, oh, I can mention this historical figure and his work in the industrial sector to create
Yeah.
throughput bonuses or whatever, right? Like when you have something which is like a strong enough gameplay element that it's worth mentioning, it then becomes worth making a story around. I wouldn't bother making a story around loyalists from political movements because it's so meaningless that I don't care. But I
Yeah.
will try to I will think of something cool for something like a throughput modifier that's really heavy. Stuff like that can be really nice. Especially the one that's really big for boosting your country early when if you're like a low tech country is like the throughput bonus in universities from getting the second production method. I think it's the philosophy department.
Yeah.
Like I can imagine that one being like an academic revolution. And I think the problem is that you have to do so much of the creativity yourself. It feels like it's a more fair shake in the other games. They give you a little more to go off of. But in Vic 3, it's like the journal entries are pretty bare bones a lot of the times.
Yeah.
They don't. They're simultaneously like the meta because how you interact with
Oh, your mic.
outcomes. Oh,
Oh
oh
wait,
shit.
no, it's
Is it
fine.
okay?
Okay, I think.
How you it's sorry, I'll repeat myself. How you interact with journal entries is kind of like the meta. It's all you. It's all you really have. Is like, yeah, I gotta min max my journal, but it's like you don't really get a lot of narrative support behind it. Whereas I think in games like EU4 and CK3, which is the obvious, you have a lot more like kind of like flavor text and a lot more build up to the journal entry. Like in EU4, a big event might come after you've completed a mission where you did a lot of stuff, and that's already a narrative. In Vic 3, I get the flaw by swapping a production method. It's
Yeah.
like, all right, cool, I guess. Like, there's not a lot of hype to doing that. But I guess that's in the nature of Vic 3, though. I mean, there's not a lot of hype to the explosive entry throughput bonus.
Yeah.
So.
I think your cat's causing your mic to get sound
Yeah,
faded repeatedly.
I think the noise suppression probably is acting up because of the cat because she was scratching her thing a
Yeah.
lot.
Um. Uh,
She went to the bedroom now, so I think maybe we're good.
okay.
She
Yeah.
just was like
Because
near the mic
it was
scratching for
fine
a bit.
before. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. But the
Okay.
um. I mean, I would be so tempted to just reference Alfred Nobel every single time, and then talk about how
Mhm.
he's only known for dynamite, which is used
Yeah.
like as destructive. But that's just like the
Yeah.
the the flavor or narrative that I like is the BB type, not like the like
Mhm.
historical type and like
That's fair.
talking about Nobel. But the in terms of like CK seems like it's generally more fleshed out towards narrative in terms of is
Yeah.
there like what mechanic would be most analogous to journal entries? Like quests
I mean,
or
in CK3, like it's probably the most sandboxy. Maybe you're competing with EU4 in this case, like which one's more sandboxy. In CK3, it's like the opposite of Victory. There are like very, very few unique decisions. But that's
mhm.
because the game is not centered around that stuff. A big one, for example, is like you can form the North Sea Empire. This is a classic challenge, is you have to play as one character, conquer England, Denmark, and Norway, and live for
Mhm.
30 years. Living for 30 years is the hard part because everyone dies in CK3 at an early age.
Yeah.
Regardless, that's like a journal entry, you could say, right? It's like you have this particular task, you fulfill it, you get a reward, and like that's that, right? Most stuff in CK3 though is completely self-driven. Like there's no thing telling you that if you make a cool hybrid culture between Norse and Anglo-Saxon, you get a reward. But you do that because it's like inherently rewarding because hybrid culture is really overpowered. But regardless, I'd say the CK3 doesn't really have them. EU4 though has mission trees, and those are a journal entry comparison, I'd say. And it's a pretty apt comparison. The difference, I guess, is that the mission trees are like because EU4 is a lot more nuanced. The mission trees are a lot more optional. Although some people I think only play for mission trees, which is kind of funny to me. But you don't have to do missions. Whereas in Vic 3, it's like if you're not doing journal entries, you're really fucking yourself up. Like you're missing out on so much like advanced research, so much throughput, like so much everything. So I don't know. It's hard to make the comparison because journal entries are a strange system. Like they expire, whereas missions never expire. At least, well, most of them don't. There may be an exception. I don't know all the missions, but most of them never expire. In CK3, there are very few missable decisions. The North Sea Empire is actually one you have to. So there's a couple. A couple little things, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what my main point.
Here,
yeah.
Your mic cut out after main point.
Hold on, one second.
It's the cat's causing you to sound gate. I assume you can still hear me, so I'll just talk. So there is a mod that I have mixed feelings on. The mod's name is Cold War Era. And that mod is I don't necessarily like how they represent Cold War in terms of systems, but what they have is like literal hundreds of events. Like just an enormous amount of events. Do you think that there should be more events in Vic 3, or do you kind of like me, roughly speaking, just kind of click through events?
Well, I mean, I click through events in every game. I know even CK3 very narratively or read that shit. Okay, I just read the effects. But and sorry to the devs. I know they put a lot of work into writing those. I never read them, but some people read them, so that's good. Does Vic 3 need more events though? I think this is a design choice that I told the guys on the what was it called, the Chumps podcast? What was it called? The Victorians, the Honest Victorians podcast.
Something
Told them,
like that,
yeah, you should take journal entries and all the like when you're passing. I don't know if you know this particular event, but when you're passing universal suffrage or republic, you get the trial of the king event where you can execute that motherfucker and pass the law immediately, but at a lot of approval. So that event is an event. But it should be a button, is how I've always presented my opinion about these things. You should have, when you get the rise of radicalism, you should have a bunch of buttons in the journal entry, just like how you have like in the old ban. I forget, but some journal entries have buttons in them. You know what I'm talking about, right? You should have like buttons for all these random events where, but if you can fulfill certain criteria, you can click the buttons. To me, that would be like a way better system than the random event. That being said, I think it'd be too overpowered, and it would make the game too not random. Like it'd make it too streamlined. Because imagine if you had a button that was like execute the king, and its requirement was like if you have more than 50% of total clout is radical or something like that, right? Like in the sense of if you had like 3 IGs, their total clout adds to 50%, and they all have radical leaders. That'd be like now you can click the button to kill the king. That to me would be really cool because it would give you like almost like inherent goals to work towards to click the buttons.
Yeah.
But it would also mean that now the meta is going to completely shift towards like always just doing whatever you can to get these things. So I think you'd need more infrastructure around it. But as an idea, I love it personally.
I think the devs are relatively like meta. Like if something's like not doesn't like necessarily comport with like a good simulation, the devs kind of crush down that meta a little bit in Vic 3. Maybe not a lot of bit. Maybe this is just me like. The just a small sample size of things where like it's like something looks meta, like intentionally going bankrupt was probably meta, and then like I did a video on it, and then like 10 days later they nerfed it, and I was like, oh this was like
I mean the example everyone's familiar with that is migration, right? They're constantly tweaking migration because every patch something is wrong with it, whether it's too weak or too strong. I think they try to be aware of the meta and they look at
They look
Dude,
at
my cat was scratching the cone in the other room, and it made my mic. Let me just turn off noise suppression. That might
yeah,
actually be
that
best.
just do that.
If you get some cat noises, sorry guys.
Nobody minds that.
Yeah. Okay, noise suppression's off. Okay, so hopefully that's not too bad. But either way, the devs I think like to tweak with the meta, and I think they have a pretty okay understanding of the meta. Like that they do it pretty okay. But I don't know. I'm weird about meta in Vic 3 because to me, the game isn't really that fun to explore the meta of. Like it can be. Like I like watching Connor videos. I don't know. You probably know Connor. But
Yeah.
Relatively small and up and coming YouTuber who does like crazy challenges, right?
I think he's kind of pulling down the best numbers right now for Vic 3 videos.
Yeah, he's doing really good right now. He's just got he's got a simultaneous combination of high volume and also high quality and interesting challenges, right? So he's doing really good right now. Regardless, when I watch him, I suddenly feel inspired to like want to do some crazy runs, right? Because like he does such an amazing job. But for the most part, like I don't really like to min-max like GDP or anything too hard because it doesn't feel very satisfying anymore. It used to be more satisfying than it is now. That or it's a skill issue. But don't tell my chat that. Okay. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's good that Vic 3 devs care about meta, but I think that sometimes it's kind of okay to leave in some unbalanced things if it makes for more fun. But I don't know. That's a hard decision to make. It's hard to just be like, yeah, devs shouldn't care about meta. It's like, no, they should. But
I think Vic 3 kind of takes itself more seriously, and like CK realizes it's a cartoon game, kind of.
Yeah, it does. It does.
And is like in Vic 3, like it's kind of like another topic I want to talk about is country bonuses. They avoid country bonuses because they felt this is like the dev answer that was like given at release why there aren't like country bonuses and stuff like this is that they felt that in the context of like being so close to the modern era, giving one country a comparative advantage in another thing would be like an offensive thing to do. But the lack of this leads to like in my opinion every single country feeling the same.
It flattens the game.
And,
no, I totally agree. I mean, CK3 had a great response for this, which was that all the cultures have unique like traditions, and those traditions, some are more impactful than others, but they're all kind of based on history. The thing is that like it's hard to tie like economic success to like a culture compared to like especially in such recent history, which is a little more sensitive. Compared to like CK3 1,000 years in the past, like it's like okay, some of them have some of them can go in rivers, some of them can't go in rivers, right? It's like okay, whatever, right? I don't really know the answer to the problem of like needing to make like of wanting to give more flavor to each country. One idea I've thought of that I was considering working on a mod for, but I'm like Vic 3 modding is a lot less intuitive than CK3 modding. Was interest group traits could be your like they already kind of are your unique things for different countries, like France has a couple unique ones and stuff. But I think it'd be cool if you could like swap the interest group traits around based on how your country is structured. Like I had, for example, in mind right now, there's not very much incentive to keep with the conservative like government because if you have like a total autocratic landowner government, you want to get that shit out of there immediately. But what if you could get access to some unique interest group traits if you stuck with the landowners? Do you remember ages ago in Victoria 3 that journal entry? Where if you stayed on national supremacy and on autocracy, you got like I forget it was like 30 years you had to stay on it, and it was like it wouldn't even give you anything interesting, but it was a journal entry that was called like the nation, or I forget what it was called.
I think that's still in the game, my guy.
Yeah, maybe, but it's like you have to be autocratic. You have to be like autocratic.
Just improved. And they don't stick around.
Yeah. I used to get it on when I would play the Sick Empire or the Khalsa Raj, they call it now. I used to get it on that one because it's hard to reform that country before corn laws was discovered. So
I'm pretty sure that's still in the game.
Yeah, but regardless, that is what's wrong. I mean, that's like that's a strange incentive to actually stay conservative. Is like, yeah, here's a journal entry. And then it gives you, I forget its reward. It was probably so forgettable that I don't care about it. But it was probably loyalists from political movements. Fucking piece of shit modifier.
I think like a lot of it's driven by them not wanting to have like comparative advantage or something construed as like offensive and like this type of thing.
Yeah.
And then all the bonuses are prestige or something.
It's funny that they say that they don't want that, but also they gave this makes total sense to me historically. They gave the silk bonus to all like the East Asians, like Japan and China, which to me like there's no offense to that. They did monopolize the silkworms, so of course they have that.
also
But
has it.
and Blake, I didn't know that. I didn't know Blake also had it.
Yep.
But regardless, points that makes total sense. No one's gonna be offended by that. I'm like, I think you could like,
I think
I don't know.
they're pulling off back from that philosophically because every DLC
Yeah.
they release, they have like it feels like there's more substance. Like EIC, they actually do have a really good landowner IG that is like worth keeping above 20%, which is minus mortality in agriculture. Or for like agricultural stuff, which includes subsistence farms. So like in terms of pop growth, like your EIC is probably the best country for maximizing GDP because it actually has like some like bonuses. But also like if you sell like, I think it's harder to sell content if there are no bonuses or like unique stuff that sets stuff apart.
Yeah.
And so or not.
The
just,
frank truth is no one cares about a prestige modifier, right? They want to see some crazy shit, and there's not a lot of crazy shit in Victoria 3. It feels like for example, when you restore the Emperor as Japan, like when you restore the Emperor as Japan, you get claims on Korea. It's like, all right, that's nice. I don't know. It's like I would like if some of these journal entries kind of stepped more into, I mean, alt history. Obviously, like a lot of them do step into alt history. But something a little more like, oh, hey, like, let's keep this going into like the late game, right? Like, what if, is Japan specifically, the Meiji Restoration could probably include some content that might lead up into like the Showa era, which is like, Hirohito's rule and all that. Like it'd be nice to get some flavor around like the militarization and like the worship of the emperor and stuff like that. But instead, it's like you finish the Meiji Restoration, you get the claims on Korea, and that's the end of your Japan content. You can do whatever you want. The game is sandboxy enough that you can continue the narrative however you want. Usually you're going to end up like conquering, you're going to conquer parts of China and stuff, and you're going to, do some creative things yourself. But it'd be nice if the game pushed you in that direction a little bit, It'd be nice.
Like, I mean, obviously it's a way more, it's an older game, but Hoi, like, also has, like, really big advantages and bonuses for various countries.
Yep.
I think it also might just be like the dates in which they were released that like kind of informed the design philosophy of just like being super sandboxy, and like the primary thing that I think Victoria 3's developers are like oriented around is like people as like a demographic and like the emergent behavior from pops, which I think is something you can like kind of hang narrative on to some extent, like when you have like Bengal is like the most populous thing or populous people in New York or something, then like that's interesting. You recently did a run where you got 100 million people in New York.
How
do you feel that
Indians?
A lot of Indians.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'll say. So, do you know the game Gilded Destiny? I'm not sponsored, by the way. I just bring it up because it's like a
plug.
Gilded Destiny is like a new it's like a grand strategy that's got a Kickstarter and all that. And I got sponsored by them a long time ago, but like that, not a long time. I'm bringing them up because they have one particular mechanic in their dev diary they mentioned recently. Well, recently, probably months ago, but I'm an old man, okay. But they mentioned different populations have cultural traits in their game. So I don't remember the example they gave, but let's say, for example, like Han pops have a bonus to working in agriculture, that's an interesting idea. In Vic 3, you have a little bit of this sprinkling of this through obsessions and through taboos. If you get a large Muslim migration, you're not going to have as much of a liquor industry because they're not going to be drinking it, right? Like that makes total sense to me. I'm really mixed about giving pops like particular skill sets that are like unique to them. The middle ground I have in mind is that you could have a sort of like retention bonus for pops that work in the same industry for a long time. Like if you had a mass immigration of particularly like machinists from China who were working in textile industries, maybe like dependent on what proportion of the employees in the textile mills are experienced machinists, you could get a throughput bonus. But I can't imagine the computing power you would need to keep track of all that. That's the big thing I'm at holding that back, is that, you already have too much management. You already have too much to manage with the current system. So adding, like, imagine if you had a little, like, you have literacy. That's already one metric that's measured on every pop individually. Now add, like, experience, or add like every industry, and it has, like, a percentage for its experience. That's obviously untenable. But this idea of, like, giving particular populations bonuses to particular tasks or particular jobs, like, I think it would make sense to do from both gameplay and history wise, because like I think that I don't know history super duper well in this sense, but I imagine that you do have like people who come from an old country to a new country, and they bring with them their skills and their knowledge, right? Like think of pizza in New York as a small example, like pizza, like
one of the interesting things, especially on the West Coast, you see a lot of this is cultural communities form, and then they acquire a knowledge of how to do a particular thing. And if I recall correctly, it's Cambodians and a lot of Cambodian donut shops in West Coast. A lot of donut shops in the West Coast relative to like other areas in America. And what happens is they have a cultural community and they know how to make this thing. And when they have friends and family come over from Cambodia, I think it's Cambodia. I'm not 100% sure. What they do is they teach them how to do it, and then they open another donut shop. And so donuts actually proliferated, like in terms of the United States, like in California, with like cultural communities coming forward. But that's not like an inherent skill towards donut making. I don't think
it's just the economic situation resulted in them having donuts for whatever reason. It could just whatever.
They have a cultural community, a shared language, and you can do this to like start a business in the United States, and then they get off and going.
It's interesting. I mean, you get a similar thing to add on to that. Like here in it's pretty common in Korea too, but in Vancouver, you have a lot of Korean fried chicken. Koreans, I don't think they have like a massive history of making fried chicken, but these motherfuckers do a great job. Okay, I love Korean fried chicken, and like all the best fried chicken places are Korean fried chicken places, at least here. I do know that in Korea they also do Korean fried chicken. It's kind of become part of their like culture at this point.
Yeah.
But that's like but originally it's like an immigrant like business idea. It's like, what if we did fried chicken?
Yeah.
Obviously Victoria 3 is kind of from an era where like in terms of like the years that we're spanning, you don't have as much of this like massive migration except until maybe much later into the game, and only really in like the United States and not really in like Canada. But like in Victoria 3's era, like migrants to Canada, at least this is what I know of the Canadian history, like Asian migration to Canada was basically to get like cheap labor to die making railways. That's like what Asian migration to Canada was like, until like much later. It wasn't until kind of like post World War II that you start to see like, actually respected and loved Asian communities. In the Victorian era, it was like, they can die, no one will care. That was what it was back then. So I don't know, like I don't know how you add the nuance without making just a total like mockery of the history.
That's
the sad truth is that minorities in this era, in Victoria 3's era, are not like valued members of the country. They're like literally just like souls to throw away. So I don't know. It's kind of like in playing in with the harsh, ruthless capitalism themes of the game, I guess. But
I mean, this doesn't get covered as much like in the game, I feel, as terms of intellectually. It was a like theme of the time is we're just coming off of Charles Darwin and the theory of evolution, and a lot of people are into eugenics, and this period in time might actually be like one of the most racist, just like completely throughout history. Like in Rome, everyone's a slave, but like in ancient Rome,
I know
if it's like one of the you're talking about the genes are better and this type of stuff, rather than just like those are weird things. Or like, to be fair, there's I forget the names, but there's like this tribe where like the two tribes live like next to each other, like indigenous people. I forget where it is, like what continent, but they both, in terms of the language, have a word for people, and then the word for the other tribe is a modified version of their word for people, and it's either like bad people or like other people or like people across the river, and it's like modified like or not people or something like this.
That reminds me of as a quick concrete example of that, in even Europe, the Slavic root for Germans is like Niemcy, which is like the Polish word, but like it's like similar words to that. And Niemcy in Slavic, like in old Slavic, like kind of the root of it means like nonsense speakers. Like, it's like it's still the word today, but it's derived from being like you don't know what they're saying. It's like they're nonsense speakers. That's like what the derivation is in terms of the etymology. But obviously, I don't think there's any like racist connotation to it now. It's just the word, but the origin. It's like how Slav is originated from like slave, right? It's not a racist thing. It's just that's where the etymology comes from. and it's interesting to think about that for sure. Yeah.
Isn't there like Aztec or Maya or something like this, or like one tribe in the Americas who the meaning of their name is "I don't know what you're saying"? Because when
that's
Spanish
the
asked them who they are, they said, "I don't know what you're saying."
I don't remember. It's not the Aztec or the Maya. It's a different. It's one of the other like minor tribes that cares about. When the Aztecs asked them like, "What do you call?" They said their name, and then the Aztecs were like, "What the fuck does that mean?" And then that was like, like they don't. Well, sorry, it's that the people they were talking to said, "We don't know what you're saying." And the Aztecs were like, "That was their name." Yeah, that's what it was. I think actually maybe that was the Mayans. I don't know. I don't remember, but that is one of those Mesoamerican tribes has that origin, which is hilarious. But yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I don't know if I'm taking us off track. I got linguistics. I did linguistics in school,
it's definitely intentional to talk about linguistics, but I know that's something you can talk about. I also think it's interesting. Like the question of like, is Victorian era like the most racist period, or is it just the tools at expressing the racism are at like the most refined height in terms of like having phrenology and like eugenics and like really just coming off of like people don't know what it's I mean like the in terms of like the intellectualism for the justification of racism, a huge portion of it is just off the back of Darwin and during this time period.
I think that weirdly enough, like Victoria 3, despite being in an era of great racism, doesn't really do a great job representing the racism. Because all racism does in Vic 3 is depress wages. At the end of the day, like you know what I mean, like in terms of the grand scheme of things, is you depress wages. I'm not advocating for these things. I'm advocating for the history here. I'm saying that like in this period there were like genocides and purges and like expulsions, right? None of that happens in Victoria 3, and those things are terrible. I'm not saying they're good, but they're part of the history, and we have to acknowledge them, right? The thing is, in Victoria 3, if you're a smart player, you would never expel anyone, except unless I guess you're having. If maybe you could solve turmoil problems by expelling a population, maybe I don't know. Like if you're playing as Japan and you're conquering China, you're gonna have turmoil because you just conquered it. Maybe you'd want to like. Obviously, this is like impossible to think of, but like you expel like the Han Pops. There's too many tens of millions of them to do that, but there's no incentive in terms of the way the game presents itself to ever do these horrible things.
Actually,
that's why probably there's no point. Yeah, exactly, because you want to keep the pops because they're labor, they're cheap labor, in fact, right?
Well, not just
whereas in real life there would have been like a political incentive to either like please reactionaries back home by doing some genocide overseas, or like you want to take over and colonize that place, so you're gonna kick out the local population and put in your own population. Like that's pretty much what Germany did with like Poles in like Silesia and stuff like that. They colonized like Silesia and Bohemia and like these Slavic regions with Germans, which had already been happening for centuries since the game, but continued into the Victorian era as well, right?
I think it will never be meta for you to do something like that. Even if they introduced a mechanic, they would never make it good. I feel like
because it would be too it'd look too bad on the we made it like meta to expel people. Like even in Stellaris, for example, I haven't played Stellaris in forever, so forgive me if this is like totally wrong. But in Stellaris, like you can be a total like genocider, and it's not that that's meta. Just that game is creative enough that you can do that if you want to. But the meta probably is not to just kill people that could be a source of work for you. It's just that it's like fun to do in the sense of space genocide is always a funny meme, right? It gets a little more real though when it's on Earth and it's regular people. But when it's not aliens, it's a little more real. And maybe in a couple, maybe in a long time from now, it's going to be controversial to do space genocide. But right now, it's just a funny meme to do that.
They also don't even want to touch it in Hoi.
Yes.
They don't even.
Well, I think that it's probably for the best for Hoi to just not have the Holocaust in the game because you have too many you have too many people who are like pretty sus when it comes to like the Nazis in Hoi 4. You probably just don't represent it. I think you just don't represent it.
I'm not saying it's a bad decision. I'm just saying it's one that has been made and has obviously been made. I think it's
like the wounds are too fresh for World War II to do like a perfect representation of what's happened there. I think the Victorian era is distant enough that like some of it you can probably do. Like they have the Trail of Tears in Victoria 3, which is just the SOL negative. Like that's a horrible tragedy, but it's far enough away that I think you can kind of intellectualize it as a gameplay mechanic, and it's not going to be too controversial. And The unfortunate reality is that there's just not a lot of people left to complain about it, which is very sad
not.
to me. But yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where like I don't, I think that these games can cause glorification of a lot of bad things if you do them wrong. I think Paradox has been pretty responsible, but it does feel like sometimes they swing a little too far in the other direction where they won't. It's almost insulting to not represent the reality situation.
Well, one of the things is like I think it's almost actually insulting that the only one they represent is the Trail of Tears, because in some way I think that's like dismissive of the Native Americans. Like it's like it's a weird way to like conceptualize it. But you guys are like so small and like there's not many of you left, and so there's not really too many people to upset, and we're going to represent this thing in history like it almost feels like a sort of like mild pandering to like people who want to see more representation of like this type of stuff in game, while they are basically completely minimal in it's the safest choice in terms of offending the least amount of people, I think.
But it gets you the approval of people who like to see genocide in their game. Probably a crowd you don't want to be pleasing too much, but
Well, I mean, I'm happy to see it because it's like a reminder of like this is like this is a time period that was like fucked up. And
the thing is that the Trail of Tears in Vic 3 is so inconsequential, and unfortunately it probably was pretty inconsequential in terms of the broader American world in that time period. It was only consequential for the natives, but in Victoria 3, who cares in terms of the gameplay mechanics? I care a lot about Native American life. For me, as a Canadian, we have a lot more. I don't know how you guys do in America, but we have a lot of focus on reconciliation in Canada.
Yeah,
and I care a lot about like the welfare of Native people. But like in Victoria 3, like it's like -6 SOL to Cherokee. It's like when it doesn't. Who cares? They're like a couple 10,000 of them in the country. It's like
I think it's even meta to move them just because of like modifiers.
Well, you can spend money to not move them, but it's completely like, why would you do that? Because the money is better off spent making jobs for them. That'll actually get them more SOL.
Like also when you move them, they move to states that have really really low population, and you have an absolutely enormous population growth modifier at really low population, so I think you would like net have more population despite crushing their SOL. And like
the sparsely populated modifier, it goes crazy hard, so it makes sense that you want to move them into those states. I don't, it's one of those things where like I think that the game doesn't really represent like at all the like benefits, quote unquote, of something like the Trail of Tears. Yeah, and nor does it represent any of the real negatives. It's like, okay, you can you can just do this genocide. No one's gonna care. It's like, well, people at the time did care, not as much as they probably should have, but they did care a little bit. And also, a lot of people wanted it to happen at that time too. Like there was two sides to the issue, right?
It would be cool if it made your like culture more xenophobic, and that was like a bad thing, and like it hindered migration efforts like later. And then simultaneously, it also like makes the people who are progressive more upset. And then also you have less cultural clashes, so you have like three different pressures. Would be like more interesting, but I think that like they just don't want to represent. Like, did you ever read the slavery stuff that they put out like when the game was released or any of that?
No.
The dev diary where they talk about slavery. They tiptoe so hard in that dev diary in terms of like
I gotta read that now. That's a good read.
They talk about like how this was too important to not put into game, but they like thought about whether they wanted to put it in or not, and then they're like and like stuff like this. If they're tiptoeing that hard about slavery, which to be fair, slavery is a form of genocide, like the odds that they want to include like other genocides that happened in the era when they feel that they can get away with not including them is like.
Oh, I think if you exclude slavery from Vic 3, that's a pretty significant like the American politics in 1836 up to like the Civil War and all that is all about slavery, like in the sense of it's the most dominant like political issue, I'd argue.
It is.
So you really have to include it. It's like the entire tension of the Union at that in those decades is like slavery. Like there's like the Trail of Tears is like the other one, I guess, but even that one is pretty minor. Sorry, natives, compared to the slavery issue.
I mean,
you have to include it. You have to.
You have to include it in the narrative, but you wouldn't have to include it as a mechanic, I don't think. As a mechanic, slavery just doesn't seem hyper consequential, just generally speaking.
Slavery is just migration by other means in Victoria 3.
Kind of. I actually think like so some of the things are opaque regarding slavery in terms of like SOL of slaves is just hyperpolarized. It's either like 1 or it's 9. And I don't understand the the driving force behind the like buy basket or what determines whether they get like 1 or 9 SOL. But if there's a way to ensure that you have 9 SOL on slavery, it's actually meta because their base workforce ratio is 50% instead of 25%. Yep. In which case it would be meta. But the problem is they like you will get really bad pop growth at 1 SOL, but the 9 SOL is fine enough.
I love the ultimate meta for slavery is to get like women's suffrage to get even more workforce ratio on them and to empower the trade unions.
Well, then it
like,
dilutes
bro,
to some
extent.
It dilutes to some extent the advantage of it, but then you get like 75% workforce ratio, which is just like tremendous. And so like even if you aren't getting as good a growth rate, it's effective more growth rate. Technically, the meta would be to juggle off of slavery and then back onto slavery repeatedly until like 1916 or something, and then go slavery because it's an equilibrium number, something like this.
God, it's such a like.
And you juggle off of it so that you could maximize pop growth and then back onto it, because if you don't have any slavery agitators or like interest group people or this, it's like impossible to get back. But like.
Well, with multiculturalism, you can always find some Arab slaver or something. I find that even in the late game, there'll be like some slaver from somewhere. It'll be like Bahrain or something.
That's true, but if you're on multiculturalism, you have to get the slaver, get off multiculturalism, and then pass slavery, which is kind of doable. You can't pass slavery while on multiculturalism, which is something I object to in regards to debt slavery. I think.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I think the slave trade probably you need to be racially segregated for slave trade, but for debt slavery, you shouldn't necessarily need to be in like culture. I think it's cultural exclusion needed for debt slavery or debt slavery.
Anything that's not multiculturalism.
Yeah.
And multiculturalism completely blocks off all forms of slavery.
Of slavery. Yeah. I don't know. I think tying this back into like narratives, right? Like I mean, because that's kind of like the ultimate topic of this here. I think that the narrative potential behind stuff like slavery is pretty weak because you just ban slavery. Like there's no real reason to keep it. In the sense of there's no nation I could think of where it's like, I want to keep slavery a little bit longer because I'm benefiting from it. It's like I pretty much always just want to get rid of it because slaves drop SOL, which drops your wages. With less wages, you get less income tax. You can't like you're empowering interest groups that suck because slave trade is 50% bonus clout to landowners. That's painful. That's really painful. Like nobody wants that. Because there's no incentive to keep with the conservative interest groups. I don't really want to ever keep any of these old laws. I'd rather just immediately switch to like industrialists and intelligentsia and trade unions and stuff, right? I think that if you want to make slavery more interesting narratively, you have to give it a little bit of a gameplay effect. I remember way back in the day when Victoria first came out, one proud Bavarian did a video where he played Austria and like reformed the HRE in the sense that he went back to serfdom, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a funny idea because like it's funny to go back to serfdom, but gameplay wise, you're only shooting yourself in the foot. Yeah. You're only ruining yourself. Like you're doing nothing positive.
It makes me like cringe.
You can make a system where maybe there's some way. I don't know what you could do because I don't have the idea off the top of my head, but some positive to serfdom. Obviously, I think serfdom has like no positives at all in real life, but we're talking about a game here, right? I can't think what the positive should be, but like something to make it so that if you wanted to revert your country to like an old form of, of its governance, there could be some reason to. But right now it's like you can do it for RP and there's no other reason to do it.
I mean, I think that maybe not like the serfdom peasantry specifically, but like in terms of like people's lives, the quality of people's lives I think went down with urbanization of populations, just generally speaking. Like when they were cobbling their own chairs and making their own clothes, they were better off than when they were like starving in London.
Well, I mean that happens if you. I actually had this experience playing Japan. I'm doing a Japan video like pretty soon, but I'm kind of dragging my heels because I'm bored of the game. But like I have a complete game. I went to the end of the game and I had trouble with the consumer economy when I was conquering China, because as I was employing up, I wasn't even thinking of like I was making tools and steel and stuff and making guns and ammo and all that. I wasn't even thinking of like clothes and furniture, and I was getting more like radicalism in Japan because I realized like holy shit, like my grain prices are spiking, all of my clothes and furniture spiking because all of my peasants are becoming employed, and I was like okay. The thing is that to counteract that, you just make like 20 textile mills, and it's like, okay, yeah, now they're chill. Like it's that the effects of urbanization can be countered by like 1 year of building, and it's like, bro, we need a little more. We need a little more like the consequences of the Industrial Revolution are not really felt very heavily by the people in Vic 3. It's kind of all just positive.
It is all just positive. It's not. I mean, their SOL doesn't go up by a ton because the peasants get like free money, but it doesn't really go down, and you don't have like these. I mean, unemployed people starve out, I guess, but you don't have these systems that create like the widespread suffering. I mean, I think both the agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution, from the perspective of human suffering, were like steps backwards. You obviously can't undo either of them. Like, but like I think hunter gatherers probably lived more fulfilling and happy lives than like people after post-agricultural revolution. You start getting a lot more war and conflict and this type of stuff,
because suddenly land becomes property, right? And that makes everything a lot more aggressive.
and you have centralized I mean, you have fighting between tribes before that, but you have a centralized like authority that controls over everything, and you start to have communities that are much larger than 200 members, which can like be intersocially accountable, and so you have like oppression of like groups, which doesn't happen as much with smaller tribes. Well, the oppression you get is you get kicked out from the tribe.
But that's on like a much smaller scale, right? For me, like I don't know the anthropology to explain why, but I know that when agriculture comes about, you start getting those empires. Like you get like the Assyrians and like the Egyptian Empire. Like you get like centralized governments that then use their combined people to like do terrible things. I don't think you had that level of organization before you had agriculture. No, and I think it probably has to do with like leverage over the people, right? If you have someone who controls all the food, you have a lot of leverage to get people to fight wars for you. Because you'd be like, I'm going to feed you and your family if you go and kill these people for me. I don't know the anthropology, though. That could be a totally false interpretation. Sorry.
An interesting book on that is like, or that contains that like section of history is 'Sapiens by, I think, Yuval Harari.
I've heard of the book. Yeah, I have a friend who's like a computer science like tech bro type who loves that book.
It's a good book.
Yeah, but he's like not to, obviously I won't say his name even who he is, and he's not a public figure, but he's like stoic, but like the online stoic. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, if you wear tape over your mouth and you sleep at night, you can do anything in the morning. These kind of like grind set type people. He's a good guy, but he's a little bit
to be fair, I use a CPAP.
And he loves like Sapiens. He loves like all this kind of stuff. But I think for maybe the wrong reasons compared to what you might like them.
Well, the Sapiens is actually just like a really good book, but like
fair enough. I haven't read it.
The like Stoics is like the like. How do I want to say this? I think there's people who don't read the Stoics very well, and they like read it and take it as like an excuse to be like
emotionally unavailable.
I was gonna say like an obstinate dickhead, but I was trying to figure out a nicer way to say it. It's not really emotionally unavailable, but it's unavailability is like different than like the Stoic position. It's like dismissive. And then the people who do it in bad faith are only like dismissive one way. Like it's some people who I think have like a poor Stoic interpretation are at least like even-handed with both themselves and others, but you see a lot of people who have the Stoic like interpretation, but it's only applied to other people, and then it's like this emotionally dismissive for thee but not for me, and like also I think that they've never read any Stoicism. A lot of these guys.
Usually they see a couple meme quotes on like wherever on like Reddit or something.
They watch some videos or like something like this, and they see some quotes and some excerpts and stuff like this, and then like they're like, "Wow, it's wisdom." Also, the Stoics just like didn't understand how emotion worked, which is like a separate issue because that is like empirically like they think that thought precedes emotion in a way that like it just doesn't in terms of like the actual way in which the brain is firing. Like the emotions precede the thought, so just changing the way you think about things isn't really changing the way you think doesn't change your emotions in the way that the Stoics think it does.
Yeah, regardless, I don't want to drag the podcast too far from.
No, that's fair. That's like
I brought up philosophy, and I knew it would get you.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, I wrote essays on that in college,
Yeah.
on specifically
Okay,
like the
nerd.
Stoics and like emotion and this type of thing, and how I think, yeah, my overall thesis was, I think the because you have to try and come up with interesting theses for like university, because like the teacher reads so many things, so like even if what you write is correct, like it doesn't like you're playing this weird
It has
game
to be
where,
novel too.
yeah,
Yeah.
it either has to be novel or simultaneously has to be novel, and also you can't substantively disagree with the teacher's position, and because then they're just going to judge you negatively, even if they're trying not to. And so the easiest way to do it is like to just like agree with their basic idea, and then nitpick on some little thing. And my thesis was the teacher seemed very much of the opinion that the Stoics were wrong, and I just generally agreed. But my like thesis was the Stoics were wrong in terms of describing the state of affairs, but normatively, like in terms of the perspective you should have, their perspective is useful, and it's more useful to have the Stoic position, and so you should believe in it for its use value rather than it actually being correct. Which was like,
Yeah.
oh, like
That sounds like an amazing thesis that you wrote.
yeah, it was really tight. The teacher
I'm being a
the
jerk,
teacher was
I'm
like,
sorry.
"Damn, I think you might be right," and I was like, "I got it," because you know, like the one of those like the moments where like the teacher was like, "Oh shit, like this actually sounds correct," and it's like
the teacher just about to go read Marcus Aurelius and go become a Stoic himself. Just, yeah, I'm done.
well,
now.
she had read like a lot more than me about like. She understood it like way better, but it's like one thing to dismiss something as being wrong, but then like the rejoinder that is more useful to believe it even though it's wrong is like a type of rejoinder that is like often outside the sphere of like where you're examining ideas when you're thinking about ideas. It's not like it's what's correct. No one thinks, should I believe this, as their primary question. They think, is this correct? And so,
do you mind if I take like a 2-minute break real quick? I want to check on my cat.
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
She's in the bedroom, and I want to keep it on. Just one.
I'll just
like,
stare at chat.
one minute.
No. Yeah. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
that sounds
Go
good.
ahead.
It sounds good.
So you should have done it while I was ranting on the Stoics, but I guess I could talk about that. We are going to do this in one clip, one unedited clip, so we are going to have Tarkus no chair for just a hot minute here. So I suppose I could unpack the argument with the Stoics a little bit more in regards to the philosophy, in that, man, I'm not prepared to be precise on this, but the Stoic position regarding emotion is that your evaluation of a situation, what happens is an event occurs, and then you have an evaluation of the event, and then from that evaluation, your emotion follows. And what, in terms of what's actually been studied in terms of the empirical evidence, and William James is a very good, like very early proponent of this theory. I believe it's called James Lang theory, and so it's named in part after the philosopher William James, who is kind of the father of American philosophy or psychology. But the idea is that you actually experiencing an event, and then you experience the emotional affective response, and then from that affective response, you determine what your you make the judgment following the affective response. And so the ordering is not right in terms of the way Stoics look at things. And Tarkus just got back like at the end of the explanation.
Dude, what is this guy yapping about, dude?
But, yeah, you got a
That's
degree in,
just shit.
you think I say I have a degree in philosophy,
Yeah.
but the truth is it's a degree in yapology.
Of course, that's what
Yeah.
philosophers do. Philosophers.
Yeah. I'm waiting for
Yeah.
them to open up a philosophy factory down the street so I can work up an assembly line. I'll come up with the premises. Some other guys will come up with some other premises. Then someone else will come up with the conclusion. It'll be great.
And then they're gonna bring in a middle manager who's gonna derive false conclusions from the premise.
No!
Or they'll be like sound conclusions, but they'll be from false premises.
Yeah.
You know, they'll do some. Dude, I didn't do much philosophy at university, but I did do like prop logic.
Yeah.
And it's like I find it really fun to do.
Major?
But
No, you have to do it.
No, I was linguistics. I was linguistics, but I did prop logic because
Yeah.
it actually is pretty useful, honestly, for linguistics sometimes.
Yeah.
But also it was like the ultimate like nerd shit, man. It was just like reducing everything to like letters and symbols.
Most
and stuff.
philosophy
like, all right.
that isn't like Russell and like Wittgenstein is a lot like that. Wittgenstein's very impressive though. Like I don't know if there's a piece of philosophy I think is simultaneously more impressive and more incorrect than the Tractatus, which I assume you
I don't
haven't
know what that
read.
is.
But like,
No.
just to briefly describe it, it's like a description of everything we can know, coming from zero premises to the extent that we can know them, which is like it starts off with like here. I'm gonna find the Tractatus real quick. Oh no, wait! I have to not cover up your face. Not like this.
I can't believe you would do this.
I
can't
covered up
believe
your
it.
face with the Tractatus. But I do have like one final topic. Actually, you know what? Chat, if you want to look up the Tractatus by Wittgenstein, you could read the first few words and then have a good laugh. But the last topic I wanted to talk about is I think that there's a big opportunity for narrative in Victoria 3, and a grand narrative that spans the course of the game. And that is a build-up... Oh, wait, what the... Did I accidentally...
Dude, you were
no,
cooking and then you lost it, bro.
No.
You were cooking.
Okay,
Bro.
no, I was cooking, and then I saw your audio output
cooking,
capture
bro.
non-existent, and I was like, oh, has he been muted this whole time? That would be a
No,
travesty.
I got noise because I turned noise suppression off. So now whenever my cat even moves, it's gonna make a
No,
little
yeah,
green. on
I thought it was just like, okay. But I think that there's this huge opportunity in Victoria 3 for a massive build-up in terms of narrative that will, like, texture your entire playthrough. I mean, if you're really just, like, cooking everyone, it's probably not going to be that big a deal, but that's a mechanic that builds up to a great war. And World War I happened in the scope of the game, and the fact that there's no great war mechanic, I've been thinking there's going to be a DLC for this, but then I also think that, like, they're just so busy putting out fires the last, like, 2 or 3 years that we've just, like, never gotten an opportunity for this. But, like, what are your opinions on, like, what a Great War, like, mechanic would look like, or, like, ideas regarding it in terms of the scope of narrative and the slow influence of all these great powers to, like, move against each other in, like, a massive interconnected way?
So I'm glad that you asked about that because I have thought a lot about Great War mechanics, and I have steps of complexity to them, right? And the first step to me is like you could have a very simple system where if there are, let's say, 8 great powers in the world. It doesn't have to be 8, but like, you know, if there are 8, then if you end up with at least 3 on each side, so like at least 6 of them out of 8 are involved in a war opposing each other, okay, then it triggers like a great war, and it's just that the diplomatic play in its current form transforms into a much longer and bigger play. And the idea would be that if a diplomatic play upgrades to Great War diplomatic play, then every country involved can add war goals up to like 100 maneuvers, and it becomes this massive list of like war goals, right? So you get this big giant war. That's like level 1. I'm like, okay, that would be probably too simple and would cause like weirdness where you're gonna have like a Great War revoke claim in Utah or some shit. You know what I mean? Like, because the AI loves like these ridiculous war goals that don't feel fit. Like, it'll be like Russia will be like regime change in Hudson's Bay Company, and it's
or
like,
if it gave zero infamy, if the war is just like a zero infamy war now, and everyone just goes bananas.
Yeah, that something like that. But for me, the big thing is that every member of the war should be able to add war goals freely, in the sense of like because right now you can have like a big war where it's like Britain versus France and Germany, and America comes in on Britain's side, and there will be like no war goals. So there's no. Yeah. It'll be like everyone mobilizing to defend the right of the Hudson's Bay Company to keep their regime, and it's like, what the fuck is this? So I would like to see. So for me, the first step is like, okay, we need to have a system by which great powers or even major powers, let's say, can add in war goals because the war has escalated, which to me is a general system. It should be a general system, is that the more war escalates, the more war goals should be allowed to be added. But the more you add, the more it escalates and stuff like that. But that's a whole other issue. The next step beyond that is to think about what is the actual victory condition for a great war. Is it just occupy the capital and capitulate the enemy? Or can it be like, can you separate peace? Victoria 3 currently has very little separate peace options. You either completely capitulate or you like win. There's not really a whole lot of like middle ground for separate piecing. So it could be cool to have a system where in a great war, every great power kind of has like their own individual participation in the war, and then they can choose to piece out separately whenever they feel like it. That could be another step. And then the third step, it would be like actually giving you incentives to want to engage in a great war, in the sense of if you're playing Germany, and let's say you have some like, you could gain loyalists for conquering Alsace-Lorraine. Right now, there's no such system for like revanchism, or like you don't gain loyalists for succeeding in your imperial goals. So it's like
Right.
there's only economic loyalists. There's never like patriotic loyalists.
There's
I think today's not to get too modern events, but in today's world, there are some people who prioritize like the dream of imperialism over their own living standards, if you know what I mean.
I know exactly
And
what you mean.
yeah, and that should be reflected in something like the Victorian era, especially because the glory of conquering Alsace-Lorraine is probably worth the fact that grain is now twice the price because all the horses are eating it because you need a lot of lancers. You know what I mean? Like,
I think
that to me should be a thing.
I think that there should be a cultural. I've said this in a lot of different spaces, but I think there should be like a cultural mechanic. I think one of those cultural mechanics should be like nationalism. Another one should be jingoism, and that stuff stuff that increases nationalism increases like tension towards moving towards a great war. And so like doing stuff like the Trail of Tears might increase your nationalism, which makes USA more likely to participate in a great war of sorts, or increases the tension meter in terms of world tension.
To me, a good way you can implement something like that already in the game systems is tie it to political movements, where you give the political movements a little more influence. Like, for example, one thing I brought up in my 1,000-hour Victoria Theory review, because I did the thing you did, but I didn't do it over and over again. I just did like once.
We haven't done it. Wait, no. You haven't done it over and over again yet.
Yes, true. I did my 1,000-hour review, and I mentioned that political movements should want more than just law changes. Like, I think there's no jingoist movement, I don't think, but if there was, let's say the supremacist movements. A supremacist movement should gain loyalists when I conquer other people. Like that, just straight up. That would be like a great way to, for example, like right now, Japan's reason to conquer Korea is they get claims on it. But imagine if you could fix your radical issue from grain prices being too high from urbanization by conquering Korea to give the people like love for the emperor.
Specifically, you should get a lot
and then
of
you
your
have
claims.
you have to keep the conquest up because the people are going to re-radicalize when the grain prices stay high. So it's like you have to keep. It's almost like it builds on itself to keep conquering. Mm-hmm. I think you tie it to political movements. If the supremacist movement has a lot of support, then you gain a lot of loyalists when you do a lot of conquest, especially with claims, like you said. But even regular conquest, like even you could have a colonial movement where conquering unrecognized nations gives you loyalists. Like whatever, you can add all these little checks. Like because right now the only thing that changes loyalists with movements is law changes.
Yeah,
which I think is unfortunately not very nuanced. Whereas you could have a system where if you get a strong pacifist movement, good luck declaring war. You're going to cause turmoil. Yeah, that would be sick. I'd love that because that would give so much variety too, and it would put a lot of importance to political movements. Regardless, that all ties into like the Great War. You're talking about escalating to the Great War. If you have a country that's because remember you can check people's political movements in the domestic tab, right? So you can keep an eye on people's political movements. If you see that Germany's getting a strong supremacist movement, you might start sweating because you're like, oh yeah, they're going to start trying to conquer shit pretty soon, right? That would be a very cool mechanic in my opinion. That would give you a very nuanced Great War system. But the most basic implementation is if enough great powers join an opposing sides, then they get free maneuvers. They can just add work. That's it.
I actually find your basic and your medium implementations a little bit sad in the sense that what they are asking for is actually just a fixing of the diplomatic play.
Yes, that's exactly what I meant.
It's not actually Great War related, other than when 3 on each side join. It's,
well, that's it for me. That's the like napkin. That's the like I haven't like written any notes or anything. That's like I ponder this stuff as I play the game a lot, and I'm just pulling from my ponderings. I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if wars could escalate? Which is crazy to say because of course wars escalate, like in the Victorian era especially. But like right now in Vic 3, when I'm Britain and I fight France for control of Senegal or some shit, like I'm mobilizing the entire army and we're invading Paris. Well, you know what I mean? What the hell is this? Like that should be a massive escalation, but of course, like colonial wars they shouldn't be that big in real life. The colonial wars are like tiny little border skirmishes or whatever compared to invading Paris.
I would love it if like the feeling of the impending war was actually scary to the player.
Yeah, but it's like
and the AI is really bad at doing warfare. I think that if they rework Navy, like the AI could be a lot better because that's the access upon where you could really abuse the AI is just landing intelligently, landing behind their landings, and a lot of other stuff. And so like if Navy gets better, and maybe that's like what they don't want to do. They don't want to focus on a Great War mechanic until like warfare is fixed. Maybe
that's totally fair to be honest. Because right now a Great War mechanic. A lot of naval bases to Pomerania, you know what I'm saying? Like a whole lot of just doing like random BS to end the war as fast as possible. Like you'd have to you'd have to make systems by which war support is a little more important. Like right now, war support is basically just your capitulation number. That's like all it is. But war support could instead be a much more dynamic number, where based on your current war support, you gain or lose loyalists. Like I think it really should be tied into turmoil, because turmoil is the ultimate stopper of nations in Victoria 3.
This
it's
is
like
how
if
it
you
is
have
in
turmoil,
EU4, right?
you're done.
You just
In EU4,
you
it's
get
like you have
stab
war
hits,
exhaustion.
right?
Yes.
And
Yeah,
then-
the AI will like never hit you in EU4 because it always gives reasonable peace deals. So it'll rather give unreasonable peace deals. But in multiplayer, that's a big meta. Is if you have like 80% war score and you offer a 40% war score deal, you're getting a stab hit if you refuse it because your people are like, "What the fuck? We can get out of this war,"
Yeah.
right? But regardless, EU4 has war exhaustion as well, and war exhaustion is killer if you let it go really high because it cuts out your goods produced, so that kills your trade and it kills your like production income. In Vic 3, I think it really is as simple. You don't have to be too complicated. It's simple as low war support causes increasing turmoil, or it increases the effects of turmoil. So if you have a very loyal population, you don't have to worry about it as much. But if you have a radical population who wants the war to end, maybe through a pacifist movement, I'm just saying, then the increasing effects of turmoil will... In Victoria 3, turmoil is fucking killer. So it'll destroy you if you get a lot of turmoil from it. I think maybe it's a little too killer, and it should be the case that when you peace out, you should then lose a lot of radicals because they're happy that you peace
out. The main disadvantage of the turmoil is you can't really construct to that state, but like if you have states that don't have turmoil, you just construct in those states instead.
Well, to me, the big issue with turmoil is the losing the tax capacity, like, or losing the tax efficiency. Because like you might just bankrupt after if you have a lot of turmoil and you can't tax.
Oh, it's like
fair. Yeah, and that to me, like obviously the construction penalty is big. Like because that's horrible. But like if you're talking about like the short term of like you're fighting a war, you're going to be losing your taxes, and then because if you bankrupt, you're going to lose the war because you're at minus 75% offense and defense. So that's kind of like the incentive is like if your war support's getting low, you have to start thinking about piecing out because you're going to start getting turmoil. But in the current system, bro, if you have the right military-industrial complex, you can fight wars forever, and no one will ever care. In fact, you might be stimulating your economy in a positive way through war. If you play the game in a certain way,
you could also just like mobilize and not fight pretty effectively because of the way in which Navy is kind of useless for establishing. Like if you just stay on an island somewhere and you don't have a land border, like you could just wait out like wars. It'll like a kind of unsatisfying way. I agree. The Diplo plays were just really unsatisfying, just in general.
Yeah, Diplo plays suck. Everyone, when people ask me about what I want to see next for Victory, it has to be a Diplo play rework, like a complete. I think that honestly, throw out the current system and do something totally new. I don't know what that is yet, but I would be happy to welcome a completely changed system. I don't really feel any allegiance towards the current system, but I understand they probably don't want to do that because that would like.
I like the idea of the current system, and that's about it.
Yeah, exactly. Just the idea. That's what I mean about you can totally throw it out, just like totally new, and I'd be cool with it. But like, only the idea is any good. I like that. They talk about escalation. There's no escalation. Like they have those 3 phases.
It's a countdown.
It's just a timer. It's just a timer. That's all it is. Like, I would like it if escalation was based on how much you mobilize and what the war goals actually are. If you're just taking some stuff in Africa. Or like not to denigrate Africa, but like if we're taking some colony from France or whatever, we should not be seeing like full mobilization and like total war. It should be like we'll mobilize like 10 battalions or whatever. Yeah, based on how much you mobilize, you should be gaining more or less radicalism, unless you have a very highly nationalistic people who are like, I want to fight. In which case, maybe if you don't mobilize enough, they get angry. I don't know. I love spitballing ideas, but the point is, in the current system, every war is a total war, and also every war is very low on consequences, no matter how big it is. The massive wars between all the great powers. In the late game, you'll get like Germany supporting like Britain against France, and Austria's fighting, and America's fighting, and Russia's involved. And the biggest war goal is going to be like maybe conquering one state, and it'll be like some shitty regime change in like Landfang or something.
Germany had
like what are we?
I can't remember. My history knowledge is not good, but I think they had like a quarter of Africa or something, and then when they lost World War I, that got stripped from them, which is a lot of like stuff to lose. Although I think that's cut down to size effectively. Like if you want to triangulate it, but.
Well, I almost think that do you know Hoi 4's peace deal system, like where where you end the war and then you kind of carve up the country.
Yeah.
I think you could implement a light version of that in Vic 3. In Hoi 4, like every war is a death war because the nature of
Yeah.
World War II.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you don't want to have that in Vic 3. But you could take the peace conference system
Maybe
of
you
Hoi
want to
4 and then
have
just cut how much you can do with it.
maybe
That's
you
all
want to
you
have
have to do.
tiers of war and have the
Yeah.
world war be an actual death war, like how it feels in Hoi,
Yeah.
and then like
Yeah.
skirmish. Like if you had tiers of war and you can't really escalate to a higher tier that easily, but the Great War
Yeah.
mechanic allows you to escalate to the super high tier. I
Yeah.
mean, that's similar to what you're suggesting. I mean, it's bad. The thing I've actually seen Hoi players complain about most is the peace deals. So that you
Yeah.
say you wish the peace deals were more like Hoi is like,
Well, because in Hoi, the reason why people play the pieces in Hoi is because the AI is like ridiculously stupid and will be like, yeah, I'd love to conquer like Tanu Tuva, and I'm like France. It's like what? What are we? Why are we puppeting Tanu Tuva? Like it's these
Yeah.
crazy moves by the AI. But people who do player-led conferences, like that mod where the AI doesn't get a choice, you just do everything as the player. People, I think, like that system quite a lot because you can kind of create like cool little zones of influence, stuff like that, right?
mhm.
I think we took that system in Vic 3 and it was like, let's say it's a tier 1 war, so it's like a skirmish in Africa or something, right?
Yeah.
You just limit it so that like you can only take unincorporated states in the continent of Africa. The game already divides up into states, right? So be like, okay, we can only discuss terms about this particular region, and everything else is off the table because it wasn't the subject of the war. And it's like that way you don't have this weird thing where like you defeat France in Africa, so you take Normandy, like because EU4 can be like that, where it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm gonna take like a random chunk of some random place that had nothing to do with the war. Regardless, I like the idea of the tiers you mentioned, with the top tier being a great war, which can be a death war, or at the very least close to a death war, and then like smaller tiers that are just chill things. Like
They're
it's
restricted by
the Victoria 3 era
diplomacy.
is full of like gunboat diplomacy, right? Like
Yeah.
talking about like that era, like America just kind of like positioning its navy and just getting shit. Like in Panama, I think Roosevelt put like a fleet near Panama to pressure them into giving them the Panama Canal. Or something. Maybe I'm getting the history a little bit wrong.
I'm
but
not
I
sure.
think it was something. So basically, like the way that
Don't give anyone
America conducted
ideas.
diplomacy, yeah, the way that America conducted diplomacy in Central and South America was like, we're gonna just park our navy here, and that's all we're gonna do. And you know what that means, And that should be like a tier 1 war. It's like, yeah, okay, there's not really any fighting happening, but here's some pressure.
Yeah.
Here's some a little bit of that. Maybe that could be a tier 0 war because tier 1 probably should see actual fighting.
I think
But,
that it should be part of like an escalate. Like I think you should have a request, then a demand, and then I guess if you
Yeah.
wanted to like make tiers, I haven't thought about this, but you could have like
Yeah.
a regional tier where everything happens has to be in that strategic region.
Yeah,
And
that
so
sounds
that's
good,
the
yeah.
only place there can be war goals. And then like it throttles your ability to mobilize. You can't like mobilize for like a regional war. And then like
Yeah.
you have like a spheres war where you're fighting not for your main integrated territory, but over influence over a larger kind of thing that involves your entire sphere of influence. And then you have like a proper war, and then you have a like death war or something like this.
Yeah. Yeah, the question is how you escalate, and I think that like I'm not sure how escalation would work, and since like if you mobilize more, does the war escalate, and what does that really mean?
You could have
Like,
it be nationalism gated. Like,
Yeah, sure,
In the
that's-
same way, like what's absolutism and like
Yeah,
EU4
yeah.
as a mechanic doesn't come online till later, and then even then you still
Yeah.
have to ramp it. You could have like
do, yeah.
a cultural nationalism that ramps in that way, and maybe you're trying to ramp up nationalism for like death wars, but like, and then if you escalate something from like proper war to death war, this makes all the AIs dogpile you. And so this
Yeah,
is,
or
like,
you could also
de-incentivizes.
base it off of your, like autocracy to universal suffrage. That gradient could also affect how much you can like disobey your
Yeah.
people's will. If you're on autocracy, I think you should be free to declare whatever the fuck war you want and suffer the consequences of your people being upset about it. But
Yeah.
like you can do it. Whereas if you have like, let's say universal suffrage, let's say you have census suffrage as America, that kind of stimulates Congress. I think then you should be beholden to like your people to some extent, right? Maybe you could be maybe you could have another law that's based like the right to declare war or something like that.
Well,
But the point is that you could use the current game systems to create like new ways to declare war and stuff.
I think even
But,
if
yeah,
you're
I don't know.
autocratic, you still would need a high degree of like nationalism and jingoism, because a lot of
Yeah.
like European leaders found their way out of Windows. When they did something
That's
that was
true. Yeah.
unpopular enough.
Well, what I mentioned suffering the consequences, right? I mean, had some pretty severe consequences for declaring a big war when your people do not want it. And that could include like, yeah, you're going to become a republic and you're going to get cut to pieces by the other great powers.
Yeah,
but
that's fair enough.
I will say that it's not very one thing that can happen is these games are video games, and I can see a lot of players being like, dude, I tried to conquer the Netherlands as Germany or as Prussia, let's say, and then like my fucking whole country exploded. What is this game? Like, you have to, I think it's also important to keep in mind that like some players will be like, what the hell, like why did I just get like destroyed for declaring a war? So there's a balance to be had between the new players and the experienced players. I don't know. Developing a game is complicated. Yeah, you could definitely do that at least. Like in EU4, for example, you can break truces, and the game tells you this is a terrible idea. What you're about to do. This is not good. But you can do it.
I think a warning bubble is like good enough. Like
yeah, I guess
declaring this type of war without sufficient world tension will result in a lot of people joining against you, and your populace becoming really upset.
Yeah, no, maybe you're right. I think that Paradox is kind of in an era with a little more hand-holding, for better or for worse. In CK2, truce breaking, the only thing that would pop up is in the declare war section for CK2, there'd be some red text that said you will lose this much prestige and gain minus 50 general opinion for like 10 years. That's extremely bad, minus 50 general opinion. But the game doesn't really tell you how bad that is. You got to know how bad it is. It just says that's what you're going to get. In EU4, it upgraded to, if you want to declare war when you have a truce, it's going to say, are you sure? Because this is like bad, right? And then in later games, they're getting a little more like, they're getting more and more kind of hand-holdy, again, for better or for worse. I think that at Vic 3, so far, the way they've made the game, they're weirdly hands-off, or they will let you like ruin. For example, you can do like foreign investment rights really poorly and end up getting your country like ruined by someone owning your entire economy, and they won't warn you about that.
But the line always goes up.
And you can also take on, for example, let's say you try to transfer Raj, right? And it says you're going to generate 120 infamy. There's no warning about that. It just says 120 infamy. And you got to know that that's like, you're going to get cut down to size by everyone in the game.
Yeah.
But regardless, I like it when the game holds your hand less, but I am only one kind of player. Yeah. I think Victoria 3 is already unapproachable enough. If you want to make it even less approachable, I think the game might actually be worse off for it. So I don't know. I'm really conflicted about like the hand-holding versus not hand-holding issue.
I like hand-holding mechanics when they don't railroad you. Like, if they're not making me do something, I don't care if I have to click an extra button, really, fundamentally.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's, like, not that big a deal. Also, you know what's really annoying? Misclicking. When you misclick and...
so painful.
I think this is actually even still the case in Vic 3, which is why for diplomatic plays we don't ever declare neutrality, is that if you were playing Iron Man on Vic 3, and I think this is like I'm not 100% sure on this because I don't even put myself in this situation anymore, but if you're playing Iron Man, the place where the declare neutrality button is the same as the swap sides button. Or back down. It might be back down, but the idea is
it's both. You're right. I remember.
If you accidentally do this against a revolution, you can brick your entire run.
Yes,
and it's like really, really, really bad. And so like I just don't declare neutrality ever. I mean, I would just reload, but like.
What is the only time I ever declare neutrality is if I'm trying to start a play on someone and I can't because I'm already involved in diplomatic play. Like you have to declare neutrality in the other plays and then you can start a new one. That's the only time I'll ever do that. Beyond that, there's no declaring neutrality is a meaningless thing. Like,
that's fair. When I first started playing Vic 3, that was like a pop-up to clear. In terms of how I looked at it, instead of something that just comes up in the UI and I ignore it, which is why I don't actually properly utilize opportunities to get involved in Diplo plays, because I just filter it out off to the right.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, same. I mean, I definitely like whenever I see my play, unless I'm particularly interested in it, I'm just going to let it tick through and I'm just going to sit there doing nothing with it. Whereas I probably should declare neutrality more often, but the risk of one day clicking switch sides is of course ever present, and there's no are you sure? There's no are you sure for that either. You click that shit, you're switching sides, you're done, bud.
And
sorry, I got Canadian for a second. Sorry.
Yeah,
I said you're done, bud. That's
you're
very
done,
Canadian. Yeah, very Canadian.
The for the Iron Man players, I have to keep that question in mind for I want to have on like an Iron Man player because I don't play on Iron Man. But like that just has to be actually bricking a run, because I also think revolutions just shouldn't like stone brick it, but I don't know what the solution is to like abusing revolutions other than making it stone brick your run.
So in Hoi 4, if you have a civil war and you lose to it, you also game over. Like, it's just over for you.
Yeah.
But the thing is that Hoi 4, the civil wars are a lot more scripted and a lot more like short term. In the sense that, like, let's say you're playing France and you oppose the Rhineland remilitarization, you're going to get a civil war from the communists because they want to like stay at peace, and that happens in the first like year of the game. So if you're going down that path, then like you need to defeat the communists. Like, that's just part of like the path you're going down. But in Vic 3, you might have played like 60 fucking years of the game, and then you get game overed by a revolution, and it's like, bro, I just lost like so much time and effort.
Yeah, I think the scope of the game is like substantively different enough that like in a 4-year game or a 5-year game, however you want to look at Hoi, like bricking to a revolution seems much more fine than. Could you imagine? Like, it'd be even worse in EU. Could you imagine playing 300 years in EU, having a rev, and then breaking the run?
Yes,
that would be insane. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you can effectively brick in the sense that like you get so fucked up by the rebels that like you can't recover reasonably. But even then, you can keep playing. In Vic 3, it's a game over screen. It's like you're done.
Yeah, you're just.
I've never known anyone that plays E4 where if they get like bricked by revolution, they keep playing the game. Like, they're just like, yeah, okay, I'm done. I got like everyone separated. Like, because when the rebels break your country, every separatist rebel gets their demands. So you might have spent the past 300 years conquering stuff. Unless you were culture converting, everything just broke away. Everything. Like, unless you were culture converting.
Do you get claims on it, though?
No. No cores, no claims. You're done if that happens. So in the EU4, it's like effectively a brick, but it's not, because you can still keep playing. The big difference is that you keep your core. Like, let's say you're England, you'll always keep England, like English territory. You'll always keep that because it's your primary cores. But you might lose like all of Ireland and all of Scotland, and in that case, like, you might as well give up. Like, you're set so far back that you're done. You gotta at least keep the difference between breaking.
Gotta at least keep the northern portion of Ireland.
Yeah.
Then you can keep playing.
Of course. Yeah. Well, the answer is you just culture convert, but it's just that it always feels dissatisfying to do that. Although I will say, quick tangent with EU4, I've gotten more and more liking for culture conversion, even though it's actually really subpar. Like, it's really a waste of diplomatic points. But it's kind of more fun to just like culture convert. We do a little genocide for fun. I've softened up on that. I like to do that more. Yeah, I like to do it a bit more than I used to never culture convert, but now I'm like, you know what? The Cornish, yeah, we can get rid of those. Yeah, sounds good. I'm sorry.
No, it's I am way too. I have a feeling that I am way too liberal with my like dry humor offensive jokes.
Yeah,
where
me too.
I will say something that I don't mean, and I will not explain that I don't mean it, and like I will just gloss over it. I'll be like, "Shout out to the Trail of Tears," and then I will just keep going.
Bro, listen, my partner's on home right now, but like whenever I make misogynistic or racist like statements as like dry humor, I get in so much trouble. But like I can't help myself.
You can't.
I'll say shit like women, and then my partner will be like, "Stop doing that." And I'm like, I don't. I'm not a misogynist.
I'm doing it ironically, please.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's fun. For me, it's some of the funniest shit. Like when my friends, like I have friends in real life who are like that too. It makes me lose my shit laughing when people say the most ridiculous things. Yeah. But some people I know, they'll be like, what's wrong with you? What are you saying? And I'm like, oh man. And on stream, I get so unhinged. On stream, I'll say like okay shit. Although I don't. As everyone knows, though, I don't stream anymore. I'm retired.
But definitely. The like, I think the YouTube numbers are just better. I should probably just stream less.
Yeah, for me that was the big thing, was just like in terms of money, like I have now that I started doing YouTube like to pay like my bills like about a year ago, and I'm like, okay, well, Twitch doesn't pay me enough, YouTube streams don't pay me enough, I just have to do YouTube videos. Unless
you like double dip and farm content off of your stream and some stuff.
Yeah, but I'm really bad at that though. I've tried it a couple times, and I've had a couple okay videos that are just like stream cuts, but I have like an ego, unfortunately. Okay, I have not killed my ego. Whenever I try to do a stream cut, I'm always like, this is shit. I need to add narration to it, and adding narration to it makes it take way longer to make. So, because I'm like, when I live stream, I'm not live streaming for YouTube. I'm live streaming for the stream. So that means I mumble a lot. I talk about a bunch of random tangents. I'm totally unfocused from the game. I'm like, bro, this is terrible YouTube content, so I gotta add narration. Means I'm making a regular video.
What you have to do is you have to like be able to oscillate between what your intention is And like, because I think you can click a thing to bookmark a particular timestamp, and what you have to do is you have to click the bookmark the timestamp, and then go into YouTube recording mode for like 5 minutes and completely ignore chat, and just like, well, in terms of like, if you're gonna do it, like the practice is like this. I don't do that, because I don't like re-upload streams, but like, I know that's something you can do, and that's probably the way to do it, because you can like, some streamers you could tell they're clip farming when they just like go into like,
and they should be
clip farm mode. And then, like, sometimes it's like, you see them, like, say something, they flub it, and then they restart and start, like, complete from the same, but they can say the same thing over again. You're like,
what I love about that's great content for the chat, too, because they see that you flub, and they're going to laugh at you, and that's like, this is great. This is only positive, because I still get my clip, because I'm going to do the clip again, and the chat loves it. But I have trouble doing that because, like, I'm not diagnosed with ADHD or anything, but when I'm on stream, like, I see a chat message, I read a chat message. Very dangerous, because sometimes chat messages are not good to read. But like, I can't help myself. I'm really bad at. I know you do. I'm really bad about just like, I see a message. Yeah, I'm gonna let my entire train of thought be now dominated by this random chat message. By the way, I'm holding this turtle in my hand. I'm fidgeting.
Speaking of random thoughts,
yeah. I'm just like flinging. I feel like I'm flinging around this turtle.
I have a pen, so I'm fidgeting with that.
Yeah, for me, that my fidget is like, I have stuff on my desk. I have this little turtle. I have Dobby, a little Dobby.
Very cute.
I have this polar bear rock.
You have like actual decorations on your desk.
Yeah, I have like legit.
I have like messiness on my desk. I got like I got like hot.
I've also got. Hold on, I want to make sure that you're. I've also got this excavator, but it's completely useless.
Dude.
Because look at the articulation of its thing, though. Like, let's say I'm trying to pick up some dirt, right? So I'm gonna put the thing in, and I'm gonna scoop. What is it? I can't pick anything up, dude. Like, it picks itself up, and then I guess, but like, you've just dumped all the dirt. Like,
that's a clearly for an adult
poorly designed
decoration. Can you imagine how upset a kid would be if they got that as an excavator?
You can't pick anything up with this, man.
Nope.
It's useless. So I just have it. I don't know why I have it. I love to play with stuff on my desk, but I shouldn't. It's like I swear to God I'm ADHD probably, but I don't want to go to a doctor because
there doesn't seem to be a theme in regards to your desk decorations.
No, it's just random shit. It's mostly stuff that my partner gives me because they're really crafty. So like my partner made this. My partner made this. You know, like these are all things that they make. And then
did they make the excavator?
No, they did not make that. I don't know where this came from. I think they got it.
Because if they made the excavator, I was gonna throw some shade at them.
That'd be hilarious. Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah. Anyway, though, Victoria 3. Am I right, guys?
No, yeah. So I don't have an additional topic. Was there anything that you wish that was present in Victoria 3 regarding narrative or the ability to construct narratives, or that stands out in your mind? Actually, no, I had one more question. Is what mechanics from CK3 would you like to see, for the purpose of expanding narrative, would you like to see in Vic 3 or ported over to Vic 3? Whether it is like outlandish, like, or too difficult to port over, but you'd still like to see it, or something that, practically speaking, Vic 3 could implement.
So, Victoria 3 is a game that has monarchies in it, so CK3 can kind of apply. You know how like there's the royal marriage button in Vic 3, but like what the like
it gives you prestige. Like most of the do nothing events, the reward is prestige.
It could be cool to have personal unions in the game. I know personal unions are an EU4 thing, but CK3 also kind of has them, just that not in name. You can be a king of 2 different countries in CK3 in the sense of you can be king of 2 different kingdoms, right? That's a personal union in terms of what EU4 interprets it as. I think it'd be cool to, in Victoria 3, have like dynastic relations in the sense of like, if you're playing as, for example, Belgium is the same dynasty as England in Victoria 3. They're both Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. So it could be interesting to try and like, as Belgium, try to get a personal union on Great Britain. Now, the Liberty Desire would be insane because the prestige difference is crazy.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, like maybe personal unions could be exempt to the prestige requirement because it's like it's a different relationship in nature. Or you could again tie it to political movements where like if there's a big British supremacist movement, they're not going to want to be ruled by Belgians. Whereas if there's a big royalist movement, they're going to love being ruled by a Belgian king as long as it's a good king, right? I'm not sure what it should look like, but I think the biggest thing to draw from CK3 is the dynastic relations, because you have monarchies in Vic 3. We have, you know, these are kingdoms, right? then a lot of them have like relations to each other. Like even like Hanover, is in the very beginning of the game, Britain loses Hanover, but like that is an example of a personal union in the game that like could matter for the purpose of like German unification. So you can have some politics around like dynastic interactions, but I'm not sure what it should look like. I don't know. I don't have any idea. I haven't pondered what it should look like, so I can't say more about it, but something like that.
Well,
Beyond that, CK3 also has like cultural units. And again, I don't know how you make this work in Vic 3 because like everything's pretty standard, but like, unique military technologies for different countries. But again, it's like I think they're avoiding that kind of stuff.
There's a mod out right now that like it has like several hundred unique technologies and a few for like each thing that would I don't know if any of them unlock unit types, but that could be like a way of approaching it, especially with like what especially comes to mind is like Prussia. You could have military units that consume like extra transportation and are like representative of like improved what is it,
like their improved maneuverability. Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I'd be okay with that stuff. It's just a matter of balance, right? Is like, okay, when you start introducing unique technologies, you introduce the need to balance a lot more. Victoria 3 is already unbalanced, to be clear, so I guess it's not that big of a deal. But like, if you're going to give one country a particular like special tech or something, well, now that country is going to be like the best country. So you have to give everyone unique techs, but then every country that doesn't get a unique tech is now pointless. It's like in EU4, why would you play a country that doesn't have a mission tree? Like, what's the point? I think mission trees are probably overall a positive addition to EU4 because they give so much like unique stuff. But it does mean that now countries that don't have mission trees are just really not fun to play because compared to the other countries, they're more fun to play. Victoria 3 to me already has the problem of like only great powers and major powers are really fun. That's my opinion. I know some people like playing minors and insignificant powers and stuff. I find it really boring.
I mean, challenging yourself is like somewhat interesting, but then it's just like you have this pre-game where like you spend 10 to 20 years getting to the point where you're a major power, and then it feels like stuff comes online.
To me, all you do this was I did a video essay about minor powers in Victoria 3 a while ago. All you're doing when you start as an insignificant or minor power is you're just telling yourself, I'm going to wait 20 years to play the game. That's all. To me, anyway, that's all you're doing.
Yeah, you're going to conquer Borneo, South Africa, and then...
obviously, like, private investment, like, foreign investment has changed things quite a bit in the sense that, like, I saw that Chum video where he played as Bahrain and got, like, 40 SOL because he could foreign invest. But I'm not going to lie. Chum made the video entertaining because he's a funny guy. I can't imagine how boring it would be to play Bahrain and just foreign invest. You're just clicking build on like opium.
There's a lot of content that I think is like would make for relatively good videos that involves a lot of sitting there and staring at the screen.
Yes. And to be honest with you, I don't know how they do it. I wish I had the skill to do it. When I do Victoria 3 videos, I have to be kind of kinetic when I play. Or else I'm gonna be like, I don't know what to write right now. I don't know what to even say about this. I'm just building. But I think that it's a skill that I just don't. I mean, I'm sure I could develop it, but I don't have the skill to make hype out of nothing. I'm not saying that like it sounds like I'm saying Chum or something's like disingenuous. I bring him up because he's the one I'm watching. Other people do it too, but Chum is just the one I'm familiar with because I watch him here and there. He'll make a video where like nothing's happening, but he's hype, and that makes the video interesting. Yeah. I don't know how to do that. I can't. I don't know how to. I'm just like nothing's happening in the game. I don't know what to tell you.
Stimulus.
But I got. It's a talent to have that ability. For me, the quality of the video comes from the quality of play, in the sense that like I'm playing the game well, and also the quality of narrative and the quality of writing. Like, I'm writing like a cool story about what I'm doing. That's where the quality of the video comes from. So yeah, I just capitalize on that rather than try to be more like Chum or something. I couldn't be like Chum or Smithy, or even Smithy does it too. Smithy's a little more gameplay oriented, but
yeah, Chum and Smithy I think are trying to and successfully appealing to a more broader audience rather than like the Vic 3 regs.
Yeah, we're the OGs. We're gonna throw our channels down the drain in order to keep legit to the Vic 3 people whatever. Although Connor is showing that actually you can be a Vic 3 completely game focused guy and you can still get by. So Connor's
like emphasis is like also so much different than mine. In terms of like I'm generally more focused on the systems themselves than the like actual execution. I like re-rolling starts over and over and over again. I don't want to do like for a variety of reasons, but that's how you do like re-rolling, and also like re-rolling generals, and like really taking your time in this type of stuff. That's how you get the like really interesting and explosive like outcomes. But like for me, I'm like I want to understand the underlying. Well, it's like I can be bothered in other ways. Like I make a massive spreadsheet for like. True. Trying to understand like the nature of like the relationships, the economic relationships in game, like this type of thing, which like I think actually like I need to update some of like some pieces of knowledge out there that are just probably incorrect, but it's gonna involve a lot of math, and I just like
bro, I just put on vibes, bro. I'm just like I just play the game, and I'm like, yeah, all right, investment pool is overflowing, build some construction. All right. Yeah. Sounds good.
I'm not even like drained. Build some construction. Just always build some construction.
Yeah, true. Every time anything comes up, build some construction. That's just what I'm doing.
I'm going.
It works surprisingly well. It works surprisingly well. It's kind of ridiculous.
There are really interesting inflection points where like you're losing money and your economy's going down the drain, and the way to fix it is actually just building more construction. Yeah. It's usually not the case, but like sometimes depending on like how things are going, specifically if your investment pool is accumulating, you get this really uncomfortable spot where you're getting like double squeezed, and you actually have to like build construction to utilize the investment pool to drive up prices, to make stuff more profitable, to make it so that you're like it makes it so you like you lose money, but you lose money how should I say? You're losing money.
Spending money to make money. You know,
you're you are gaining a line of credit faster than you are losing, or not faster than you're losing money, but the margin you were losing money before and approaching your credit limit was faster than now it is now, where you're still losing money and you're still approaching your credit limit, but at a slower rate. And so like you add construction, and like that's like to a new player, that's such an uncomfortable play pattern.
And then you don't realize it, but as you construct, you're generating jobs, you're generating more income taxes, and therefore you're kind of slowly fixing your deficit, but you have to like throw your deficit into a worse place in order to expand your limit.
You're slowing down your rate, but increasing the number faster. You're increasing your debt faster while slowing down the rate at which you're increasing your debt. And then if you keep slowing it down more and more and more and more, eventually it's going to zero out and then go and move in the other direction.
Yes, exactly. Victoria 3 is perhaps one of the least intuitive games to play of the Paradox suite.
Yeah,
and yet it is also so unique. One thing I'll say, some positives over Victoria 3. It's the only game that does what it does, man. It's the only game that does this kind of shit, at least in my opinion. Like this sort of like economic simulation that's so. I was gonna say it's not realistic. It's quite far removed from reality.
No,
but it's so
people
like,
buy fake stuff, but
exactly, yeah. But it's so like I don't know, just. It's so nuanced, I guess. I say that it's not even that nuanced, but it feels so nuanced, and it feels like so satisfying when things work out the way you want them to.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something. I when I figure out how to put it into 1 or 2 sentences, I will probably make a video essay about it. There's something really appealing. Well, I mean, I'll expand on it more, but there's something really appealing about Victoria 3 that I have not been able to put my finger on yet. I tried. I did my 1,000-hour review. I tried to kind of explain it, but it's like it's hard to explain what it is. The game. There's some through all of the like shitty systems and like things that don't work how they should, and like lack of historic representation and stuff like that. There's something very strong, some substantive right in the middle of it, where it's like it all kind of just somehow this concert of like fuck ups creates like a beautiful symphony, and I don't know exactly what it is.
Well, the symphony is like a good analogy. It's because everything's interconnected, just like fundamentally, and there's emergent results from everything in other areas. Like you increase your SOL, you like drive up like literacy, and you drive up actually literally just everything's interconnected. That
must be what it is.
There was a chess player who.
True. Sorry, I just wanted to be an asshole.
Vasily Smyslov, and his nickname was the Hand, because the hand moved, and then that was always just the correct move. And he played until his 80s. He was really, really strong chess player. But when he played, just everything was coordinated, and everything was harmonious, and all the pieces worked together. And like in terms of all the mechanics of Vic 3, they all affect each other. So there's like a sense of like harmony between parts. Now, some mechanics might be like iffy and like the warfare is bad, but everything is touching everything else simultaneously. So that like if you can't explain one thing without explaining 5 other things, which makes understanding the game a little bit difficult. But what you get is like this interconnectedness where like in other games everything feels like a blunt instrument that like feeds back in a really like straightforward way that doesn't have emergent gameplay patterns, and it doesn't have like harmony. Instead it's like, this building generates 5 gold, it costs 50 gold, you use gold for stuff, and that's it.
I see what you mean. Yeah, I see what you mean. No, that's a good. It's a good way to put it. I just want to find like whenever I do like a video essay, I want to make a thesis, right? And I don't know how to put it into a thesis yet. Exactly what it is. It's like interconnectedness is a good like theme in the sense of like, yeah, it's the interconnectedness of all the systems, but like how to boil that down into a thesis and then write about it.
I think the metaphor that you used is good. Yeah. Like if you take a symphony and you play all the instruments by themselves, it sounds like ass.
Yeah, it's true.
It's like it's only like with everything together that it's interesting. Like many of like the emergent things that you get based on prices changing. Like the reason why it's valuable to de-peasant peasants isn't just that they're cheap labor, it's that they like increase prices and give you more profitable opportunities for consumer good buildings, even when you are sending them into iron. And so the general driving up of prices more than like prices should be driven up and like this type of stuff. I mean, you can hyper sweat like everything. That to me is like the stuff that's interesting, but I think I've already like kind of pushed like the reaches of like a lot of the emergent types of things, and like yeah,
I mean, I don't know, I it's funny, that stuff to me is also subconscious. When I'm playing Victoria 3, like I'm just a vibes player. I'm not even thinking about this stuff much. I'm just checking my heuristics, which is like, what's my investment pool looking like, how much am I gaining, what's my budget looking like, how many peasants do I have. Like, I'm not even thinking about all the interconnectedness per se. I'm just taking actions and it's resulting in cool outcomes. And it's like, all right. Well, for me, one of the most satisfying things is like when I just see a big profit number on a business. It's like such a simple pleasure, but it's like, yeah, I built 40 tools industries, and they're owned by a company, and they have like 100% throughput, and they're like doing this amazing profit number, and I'm like, yeah, this feels great. There's just something about that. It's just like a simple pleasure.
I'm like, yeah, I don't look at individual industries like ever, but
I do that all the time. Okay, that's what we're different than. I always look at individual industries. I check my companies all the time.
You're like 100% right. Is like I just check like the vibe of like the budget, the investment pool, and like the peasants, and like that's like without needing to look at something specific. If you are tracking like the trajectory of those things in your mind, you can kind of just tell what's going on without like needing to look at stuff.
To me, those are like the 3 heuristics that will pretty much drive all of your choices. Is like, is your investment pool piling up or is it draining? Is your budget sustainable? And do you have workers available? Do you have peasants? That's pretty much it. Other than that, the first couple of years of the game, I'm probably thinking about clout. If I'm playing a backwards country, I might be thinking about, okay, I got to privatize stuff so I can get more industrialists, like whatever. I'm thinking that. But even then, I'm probably not even thinking that. I'm just thinking like, the industrialists will get unmarginalized when they're ready. I'll just use corn laws. That's probably what I'm going to do in most games.
I wish laws like what was good felt like variable, but it's just actually always the same meta, and so like
every time.
It's I mean, like especially, I mean, I haven't concluded the round or moved through the round as much, but looking at the effect of wages and increasing positive wage modifiers is actually so ungodly painful that I think like multiculturalism is just like now just meta, because it just means you get more construction. It always has been, but like with the racism update, I felt it was like more up in the air. And like
but then it wasn't.
But now it's like you go multiculturalism not because you want everyone to be accepted, but so you can pay the government workers less. Like because there's less of a modifier on the government workers. The government workers are always the hyper accepted pops, and so if you go like ethno state and you have a bunch of cheap labor, that's good for your industries. It's really bad that like, and the way the modifier stack is additive. So like decreasing government wages, decreasing the rate, is additive with positive increases to to wages, which is really bad because it means that your slider thing basically does nothing in terms of the
Yeah.
math.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I just line goes up. That's how it is for me,
The,
man.
the yeah, that's
That's all it is.
I'm
Line goes
I'm
up.
also a feels player. I just like I feel like I
Yeah.
like to confirm things, but it's like
Yeah.
you don't like start with the spreadsheet. You're like I think this is what it is. How can I
Mhm.
like either prove or disprove this? Because
I learned Victoria 3 in a very similar way to how I learned CK2 and EU4 back when I was like a teenager, which is that I just kept playing until I started playing right. Like in when I was like a teenager, I did watch some EU4 Let's Plays because I used to watch the Let's Play back when Let's Plays were more common, like more watched, as opposed to
yeah,
like the kind of edited content we have now. And you learn a bit from the Let's Plays, but ultimately, like when it came to CK2, especially the way I learned CK2 was like I'm just gonna play the game and just whatever happens happens, and then I'll just learn. Like it was such a passive learning experience. Whereas with Victoria 3, I also am doing the passive learning experience, but then there are people like you who are doing the more active, like I'm gonna get into the numbers and look into all of it. It's
yeah.
probably more effective to do what you're doing, but like it's less fun. For me, it's kind of fun to just like learn by doing,
Initially, I
but it takes a
thought
long
that like tools were the best industry,
time.
and then I looked at the efficiency per construction, and then it's just like it's so clearly wood that like it's
Yeah,
just
what
like
is
oh.
great? Fish are good. What is good?
If
These
like
kind of
tools
stuff.
intuitively seem like they should be good because they feed into
Yeah.
everything, they're used in everything, they make everything more
Yeah.
profitable. But like this is actually like probably the biggest mistake like new players make in terms of evaluation is
Mhm.
they think decreasing input costs is good.
Yeah, not
Uh,
always. It can be good to some extent, but not too much.
it's good if you're importing stuff, but if
Yeah,
you're
that's
the way you decrease input costs is by overbuilding the industry relative to like an equilibrium,
hmm
which now means
Yep.
you disproportionately have more tools, and if you
hmm
disproportionately have more tools, having them cheap is bad because it makes them unprofitable.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
true.
I think that's the number one thing new players get wrong in terms of like looking at economies. But maybe it's not the
Yeah,
number
I
one, but
mean,
it's big there.
probably the number one is thinking that the budget is like the EU4 budget, where it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, of course I want money. It's like, no,
Nope.
no,
It's because
don't. I tell people that some people, if you've ever played like a real time strategy game, like an RTS, like Age of Empires or StarCraft, when you
yeah,
stockpile minerals or gold,
real
you're fucking
bad.
up.
Yep,
You
yep.
should be spending everything. That's how Victoria is a little more nuanced because if you do that too much, you're going to bankrupt, and that's like the ultimate bad outcome. But like you should be treating your gold reserve as like unless you know that you're going to, for example, go to war and you need some
Yeah,
backup gold reserve, you should always just be draining that shit right away because otherwise you're just falling behind, right? I try to explain it to them that way because in EU4, like you can stockpile money. It's not really a big deal because the buildings aren't that consequential, except in the
yeah.
very highest
Uh,
tiers of like multiplayer meta, where like yeah, every single building counts. But in single player, it's okay.
yeah,
Stock all the money that you want. But in Victoria 3, it's like to be fair, Victoria 3 is like that too, where you can play pretty subpar and still beat the AI. But if you want to
yeah.
like, most people aren't trying to just beat the AI; they're trying to achieve great things, right? So they're like, yeah, I want to
Well,
get a billion GDP.
the when you don't spend, it doesn't shrink the economy in EU4.
That's true.
Is
Yeah,
like
yeah. It doesn't. It doesn't
is
Victory
the
though.
substantive difference, and in Vic 3 it
Yeah.
like actively shrinks the economy. So
Yeah.
you're getting less money when you're hanging on to money, not you're just giving up the opportunity cost to earn more money. You're
Yeah.
actually getting less money
That's true. Yeah.
as well. Um,
Yeah.
did you have any other? We're approaching 2 hours, so did you have any other like additional thoughts on narrative related to stuff I didn't ask, or this type of
Mm.
stuff?
Well, if I were to make a closing statement about narrative in Victoria 3, I think that it's a game that has a lot of potential for narrative, but doesn't really capitalize on it that much. Stuff like we talked about agitators a while ago,
Hmm.
and agitators are like one of those things where depending on your tolerance for memes, they're either like a great storytelling mechanism or they completely rip you out of the game. Victoria 3 has a lot of stuff like that, I think, where it's like stuff happens and you're like what the like you don't it's either too inconsequential or it's too radically game altering. Like for example, do you know the World to Win event where like when the communist movement kind of like takes hold in your country? Feels
Yeah,
very inconsequential when that happens. It's like, okay, so now my trade unions are more likely to be communist. Like, okay, they're
yeah,
marginalized, or like maybe not marginalized, but they have like 8% clout, like whatever. And then on the other hand, you can invite like one Republican industrialist, and your industrialists have like 30% clout or something, and now you can become a republic.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, okay. It's like one guy has just completely fucking altered the entire nation.
Reformer
right?
industrialist, let's go.
Yeah, it's like that. It's a weird thing where you have to, with other Paradox games, you have to do work to role play, and since that you have to do some thinking in your own head about what the role play is. In Victoria 3 though, you have to do like all of it. Like you got to be like, okay, why does that cheater come here? I don't fucking know. Only Garibaldi is the only motivated agitator. He will come to you and be like, I'm gonna help you, and then I'm gonna leave 3 days later because he's funny.
He's the only one that's dynamic.
Exactly.
I was actually surprised in terms of when I asked porting over stuff from CK that you didn't talk about characters more. And so you talked about monarchy.
Well, yeah. I think because Victoria 3 is a game more about like the people more so than than a person, which is that's a funny way to put it. But like Victoria 3 to me should be a game. In CK3, everything is top down in the sense that like your king does shit that affects the world. Victoria 3 is a lot more about the people under you are going to affect the way the game goes. It's a lot more bottoms up, or that's for drinking. It's a lot more bottom up. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever. Point is that I think the whole great man history doesn't fit Vic 3 as much as it fits CK3. In CK3, it's very fitting to have like one guy completely changes the whole world because it's like that era of legendary kings like that. In Victoria 3, like there's Bismarck. He's like a legendary figure of the Victorian era. There's Victoria herself, of course, but even then, Victoria isn't that pivotal to the British Empire. It's the empire.
It's the economic relations of
exactly. Yeah, it's not Victoria that did all that shit. It's like the British government.
It's being the first one on the stage of industrialization, and then having complete naval dominance, allowing you to extract from the colonial world much better.
So the point overall is that in terms of narrative, Victoria 3 is weirdly lopsided or lopsided. I don't know if it's a P or a B. I don't. But it's weirdly imbalanced in that like sometimes you'll have one character does this crazy shit, and at the same time the people have like no influence, but they also have all the influence. It's hard to explain, but the way that clout currently works and how like clout can be like clout is this weird system that has like no inertia. It's completely like frictionless, where it's like one guy can come to power in Industrialists and completely change everything about the country, and it's like. That's more a CK3 thing. That's more a CK3 type thing where one character can completely change everything.
Yes, exactly. Completely ubiquitous in terms of every single run. Is kind. I think that
like to me, it doesn't make sense that one market liberal can make every aristocrat in the game be like, that supports the landowners in a way. They support the clergy, for example. They can make everyone want to implement laissez-faire. Like, bro. It's not that easy, it's...
I think a solution to that would be... Well, it'd be complicated because currently IG approval is tied to the IG leader. But I actually think that every IG should be led by 3 people. And the degree to which the clout is influenced by their ideology is proportionate to their popularity.
Damn.
And then you could multiply the effect of their ideology times, like... all the modifiers that give positive or negative that's influenced by ideology, and proportionally put that number on top of what the approval would be. So you'd have like decimals and rounding and this type of stuff, which the game doesn't like to round or use non-whole numbers. So like I don't know how difficult that is to implement. But just by having like them led by 3 people instead of 1 would make it so that you can't just like... the IG leader ideology
it gives some inertia. It gives some friction and some inertia to the clout. I like that you brought up popularity because one thing that I think is not used is popularity. Like
it
if you have
clout,
a very
it
affects clout and it affects elections. Like it does affect those things, but it's like I feel like if you have generals and their popularity affect whether or not they'll become the leader of the IG when the leader dies. That's the big thing. But like. The popularity is basically just like what are their traits, and their traits will determine the popularity. Like if you have a demagogue, then okay, high popularity. But I wish there were more ways to have some influence of popularity. Obviously, with generals, if they win battles, they gain like 2 or 3 popularity. I wish it was more.
I mean, they don't gain like enough to overcome an advantage.
Exactly. They never gain enough to reasonably affect the game. I think that like a general, if you make like a field marshal general, and they like single-handedly win a big war, that should be a massive spike in popularity. But it's like not. And the popularity is something that I can more directly influence. Get ready for this one. In Imperator Rome, okay, a highly popular general you can hold a triumph for them, and the reason you do that is because it forces them to retire. So you celebrate them, and now they stop being a general. And you do that because if they're too popular, they're gonna like overthrow your ass.
Yeah.
So it's like popularity from military victories. Obviously, Imperator Rome was a very different game and a very different era. Yeah. But I like to try to base what I'm saying in like history a little bit. Like Roosevelt was very like Theodore Roosevelt was very popular in America because he like won in Cuba. Like he fought in Cuba, and like he did a lot of cool. Like he was like the Rough Riders, right? His image came from a lot of his like military conquest. Not every president is famous for their military stuff, but you can get famous in other ways. But this is one example of like a man who rose to power off of the back of being like a badass general in some ways.
I mean,
he did other things too. He was also like, what was he, like a mayor in New York? I don't know if he was
my favorite police chief is in the middle of a speech he got shot in the chest, and then he kept going, the speech.
Yeah. He's like, I believe I've been shot, and unfortunately they shot the script. So he was like, I can't read my script now, but I'm gonna. But regardless, like he was obviously like a crazy like mad lad, you know, in that sense. But taking that as inspiration for when a general does crazy stuff, that should like whatever ideology that general has should be very influential. And you see that with Roosevelt in that era, the progressive. Like the progressive, you know, ideology that he had became much more popular on account of him. And when he, like, you know, I forget if he retired or passed away, but when he stopped being in politics for whatever reason, progressivism also kind of died with him too. You know, then you had like the kind of return of like conservatism and stuff like that.
You know, it's
like that should matter more, but it doesn't in Victoria.
If you made a mechanic for proportionality of IG leader ideology being influenced, you could actually make it so it's like you have three agitators, or you have three characters, and they are the government arm, but maybe you'd say that they inform 65% of the clout, and then you could have 35% come from the proportionate ideology of the generals based on their popularity.
Sure.
And then that would make it so that all the generals' ideologies matter, and they matter in a way that's proportionate to how popular they are. Instead of this winner-take-all, just the most popular general is the only relevant general because they will become leader of the IG eventually when the IG person dies. And this is always... Like, you could also have cultural characters, and you could even do it like 40% culture, 40% political characters. Like if you had political movements, cultural movements in a way that's similar to like political movements, like jingoism and nationalism, but like a separate like UI, and then like 20% general, and then
I mean, it all sounds really good. It's just a matter of like how it would explicitly look in the game. I think for me, like in terms of the broad like prescription, is that politics needs to be more nuanced, based around like both characters and the people. Political movements give a little bit of that, but not really enough to me. Political movements are kind of just like, oh wow, like a law change, and that's all they do. I wish the political movements had more of an effect on the actual like game itself. And then also the popularity of particular characters and the rise of ideologies backed up by characters. Ideologies, I think, rise from the people and also rise from individuals. Like it can go both ways, because like, for example, like communism in like Russia kind of was driven by like a couple of key figures, but also like
to some
the people
extent,
drove
this
it
works
too,
in the sense that agitators drive movements really strongly, and the movements, if they're influencing IGs, will increase the role for particular ones.
Yeah,
it's just like
it's winner takes all, like you said. It increases the role. What if you don't get the role? Then that had no impact. Then
if you have 3 roles or 6 roles or 9 roles or something like this, where it's a catalog of political figures, then the role like just being winner take all is much less relevant. But this is something I complained about with like politics. Have you played Better Politics mod at all?
No, I haven't done like any Victoria 3
mods. It like
mods.
triples the amount of ideologies. Of political movements rather, IGs.
Interest groups?
IGs, yeah.
IGs, okay, yeah, IGs.
Which effectively dilutes the importance of any one ideology, because you have like triple the amount of IGs.
Yeah, but they might agree on some things, right? So that's why you probably have like
and
some.
So they will often. There's actually like ideological interest groups, and then there's bureaucratic interest groups, which is like That's kind of like the way the mod sorts them, and so every single movement is split, or every single like regular IG is like kind of in a sense split into at least two. In that
Right.
there's like a bureaucratic version of the interest and an ideological version of the interest, and there's a lot more ideological things. And then depending on your government, it can be more bureaucratically influenced or more ideologically influenced.
Right. Okay.
And so like
kind of like populist versus bureaucratic, I guess, in a way.
yeah, so like
yeah.
the like if you think about like today, like CCCP would be like entirely like bureaucratic. Whereas like something like the United States would be like much more ideologically driven.
Yeah.
Or something like this.
Definitely an interesting idea. I guess the logic behind it. Remember when law changes, so it was like 3 stages. It's like you can dilute the effect of RNG by adding more trials. That's like a stats 100. You know, everyone hopefully should know that. You could do the same thing with clout in politics, I guess. You just add more IG leaders, and therefore you're diluting the importance of RNG. I think it might actually work. You know, I think I was a bit skeptical at first when we were talking about it. I was like, I don't know, man. It sounds like a lot of just like adding more numbers.
Proportionate, yeah.
But it could work quite well actually, because it works pretty nicely for law changes, where it was like, yeah, remember in the past when you could just like god roll a 5% to pass something and then just get it on the first try.
Yeah, or
it's
just
like, oh shit, let's go. Yeah, but now you kind of like you could do that, but it's going to be a lot more work because you have to do like 3 fucking times.
Yeah.
But you know, I think that could actually work really well for IGs. It's interesting, and also it would give more of a sense of story too. Talking about narrative, you know, bringing it back to the central topic here.
I think
you have more characters
fighting
each other.
Feel really important too, and then you would be able to also have infighting. You can have a whole suite of events for them bickering amongst themselves, and so then they lose interest-group attraction, but they have huge swings in popularity as one tries to take over like the interest group or something like this.
If like power struggles within the interest group.
If you cheesed your way into like a communist industrialist and you have a market liberal industrialist, those dudes should just go at it and tank the entire interest group with their infighting, which would be super cool. Like like I think that would be really sweet, and you could like. It seems like you would just have to do things proportionally. This wouldn't be like a huge like. Well, the infighting would be a whole separate like series of events that you could put in the game if the ideologies of them are really inconsistent. But also, this would make it so if you get a market liberal landowner, the other two leaders in the they would just try and beat him out of the party like repeatedly because the landowners would be like, I don't know about this. We're not about this type of life.
You know what you could probably do is like you could add systems where, because I think that popularity should be like it's already important, but it should be more variable. I think there should be systems where like as the player you could spend authority maybe, or maybe influence. I don't know what you'd spend, but spend something to like increase or decrease the popularity of rulers, maybe based on your censorship laws. You can just how much influence you can have.
Yeah, I think
because you can already suppress political movements, right? You can suppress political movements, and that's all fine. But like you should be able to suppress people. Like think of like I mean a good example. Think of like Rasputin in the Tsar, like where it's like in terms of if you were to abstract that to Victoria 3, Rasputin was kind of being bolstered by the Tsar, you could say, or maybe at some points he was being suppressed as well. But the point is like you have an individual who is getting like almost like state sponsorship to like influence the nation, right?
Yeah.
I think it'd be interesting if you had like a market liberal and the other two landowners are pissed off at the market liberal, but the government is like backing that market liberal. So it's like, okay, the government's giving its influence over the interest group.
That would be sweet.
And the interest group might be upset by that. Like these are all I think this would serve the narrative very well, and it also would serve like the actual game's like meta. But I will say that eventually every game like this, you eventually get people who are gonna solve it, quote unquote, where it's like, yeah, okay, you're still gonna do like if you're playing meta, it's gonna get the market liberal, give the popularity to the market liberal, and then like eventually just like pass the laws you want to get or whatever.
I think.
But one thing I think people underestimate is the importance of the journey, not just the final destination.
Yeah.
If it's more fun to get to that final point, it's definitely worth doing, even if it's the same outcomes. Because I get the feeling, if you add this change, you're still going to do corn laws, you're still going to get the market liberal, you're still going to do all the same things, but there's going to be so much more nuance to how you get there, and that matters a lot.
It'll be a really strong nerf to the non-Europeans, though. Like, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which some people really hate that. And I think that's kind of complicated. Like, I've had this discussion with people. Like, do they want to be able to turn Sokoto into the technological capital of the world? And it's like, well, there's like, we could either construct the game in terms of design philosophy around gameplay perspective, which suggests that you should kind of be able to do whatever you want to some extent, or you could build it around simulation perspective, in which case I think it's completely unreasonable to think that in 100 years you could make like Sokoto the technological capital of the world with the like material conditions at the start of like 1836.
Well, I always lean towards the game aspect as opposed to simulation aspect. That's like my personal leaning. But I understand not everyone has that leaning, so that's why I don't advocate for just like pure gameplay.
Yeah.
But I will say that one interesting balance you can try to do is like for something like Sokoto to become the tech capital of the world, they're going to have to sacrifice a lot of other things. The thing is that you don't have a whole lot to sacrifice in Big Three. It's like, I guess you could have some king who like declares that, like I'm thinking about how to think about it in terms of like the role play, right? Some king that's like declares that we're gonna massively great leap forward the country, China style, and that means you're gonna have to purge a whole lot of dissident elements, and that's gonna cost you population, which is very important in the game. That's gonna cost you like economic growth because you're gonna get turmoil. Like you could do all this stuff, like you sacrifice other things, but it's like, why? There's no. Why would you do that?
All advantages are kind of like emerge from GDP or like
exactly.
from buildings. And
the game is so one-minded. Like everything is about more building.
Yeah,
everything is about growing the economy. Everything is about getting jobs. Everything is about depeasanting.
There's nothing to sacrifice. There's also like right now there's actually two things to play for. There's two things players play for, generally speaking, or maybe three. There's map painting. That's the third one. Like there's some players like that, and I think that's like the people who play a lot of Victoria 3 and have a lot of hours, I think they don't really care about the map painting as much as they care about driving up the GDP or driving up SOL. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I think
those are the two metrics no one cares about, is the GDP and the SOL. And map painting is a noob trap because it actually significantly harms you to map paint too much.
Yeah, well, I mean, like in theory, if you're like GDP maxing, you do have to do a world conquest if you're trying to max by the end date. But like, if your goal is map painting just to map paint, then like I think that's generally not the more experienced Vic 3 player. Although I could be wrong. Comment below. I read like if you think I'm just
engagement bait.
I mean, I should just like do more of that, just generally speaking. But oh man, I had a point. What was my point?
Guys, tell me what your favorite pizza topping is. Put it in the comments below.
Favorite pizza topping, and why is it fried eggplant? Let's go.
Holy shit, I'm gonna kill you.
Have you ever had fried eggplant on pizza? It's
I have not.
Yeah, you can't. Have you had eggplant parmesan before?
No, I've eaten eggplant though. Like I've eaten fucking fried eggplants.
Oh, it's like you've.
All right.
So like, it's hard to, if you've not had eggplant parmesan, it's hard to make the argument for fried eggplant on pizza because it's kind of like an extension of it thematically. But you could have like. Unfortunately, the place near me that does fried eggplant on pizza doesn't do bacon.
Oh,
it's like
you gotta make your own bacon and put that shit on the pizza.
What I need to do is I need to get like bacon from another place and then bring it to the fried eggplant place and be like, look,
do it.
Here's what I completely I was about to make a point. I completely lost my train of thought.
Yeah, too late. Too bad. Pizza took over. It's over for you now.
It did take over.
I'm gonna break my fast today with pizza, bro.
Debated by your engagement question. To be honest.
Yeah, it worked. Look at how well it works.
Oh no.
Dude, one of my favorite toppings for pizza though, it's I think it's underrated, is black olives. I don't know why they go hard on pizza. I don't know what to tell you.
What about only Canadian bacon in solidarity with the Canadian people?
Well, I mean, we just call that bacon here.
Yeah.
I mean, Canadian pizza is pretty good. It's like a Canadian pizza. What is it?
We call it freedom bacon now.
Hold on, what? It's like a Canadian pizza is like a particular set of toppings. Yeah, pepperoni, bacon, and mushrooms. It's pretty good.
Pepperoni, bacon, and mushrooms, but your type of bacon, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Our bacon. It's pretty good. I think it's quite nice, but I will say, because I'm living in a place that's mostly like Indian, I always get like Indian style pizzas, and that shit is so good, bro.
That seems like it's so really good. Instead of like marinara, you get like a curry sauce or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. But they take the butter chicken and gravy and just that's the sauce. And like, then you put
the pizza dough and like non. Like,
no, we don't do that. No, that's too much. That's too much. It's regular pizza dough, which is fine. But you get the butter chicken sauce for the sauce, and you put like You put like the Indian spices that like they're in the sauce, so you get like the Indian taste, and then you put like chicken on the pizza, and you put like you can put like jalapeno on the pizza and stuff like that, and they put
so good.
when they some people don't like it, but they put cilantro and ginger on the pizza. Those are the weird ones people get turned off by is ginger on pizza. But I'm telling you, it is so good. Okay, ginger on pizza.
I think I'd have to try that. That's like not
it's a scary attempt. It's a scary thing to try. You don't put a lot because ginger is a very powerful taste. You put a little bit. You put a little bit of ginger and you put some cilantro and you put like and then you put like just a bunch of vegetables and like some chicken or something. It's really, really good. I might, now that we're talking pizza and I'm fasting for Ramadan, of course, I may order a pizza later today because I want to eat a fucking pizza. Yeah. So if I do that, I'll take a picture of it and send it to you so you can see what it looks like or something. Pog. But it's so fucking good.
I can make that the thumbnail.
Yeah,
just like crush my click through rate by making that the thumbnail. I think I'd just take the like an image from like the recording and use that as a thumbnail.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this podcast kind of meandered a bit, so it's like it's not quite as focused as maybe it should be for like if you want to. Yeah, podcasts tend to meander. I say that like the overall theme being like Victoria 3 narratives, you might want to theme it around that, but we talked about a lot more than just narratives. I think I don't know. I want to give you
like narratives about the journey rather than.
That's true. They are. That's so true. Sisyphus is happy, or I must imagine Sisyphus
one must
happy.
Imagine Sisyphus, yeah.
It's about the journey. But I don't know. Like narrative in Vic 3 is like you have the big conclusion. I'll say the sort of concluding thought. Narrative in Vic 3 is so player driven. It's not very much of it's given by the game, unlike other Paradox games where it's a little more given by the game. You got to do all the heavy lifting when it comes to narrative because clicking invite agitator on like some rando from God knows where it is hard to. The game doesn't give you any reason why they're coming, so you got to think of it, and that's and some people don't care about narrative, right? So if you're doing more the Connor style, not that Connor doesn't care about narrative. I think he does care a little bit, but if you're just going for like crazy strategies, who cares?
The narrative is the objective, right? Insofar as there is one.
Yeah. So to me, like that's the unique thing. That's the unique Vic 3 thing is that so much of the narrative is your job compared to the Paradox games. Yeah. And I don't know, in terms of fixing it, like I like your idea about the multiple agitators on the interest groups. I like the idea of great wars and like escalations of wars, stuff like that, to give something of a story. I like the idea of more bottom-up political influence. It's funny because the game's clout is bottom-up.
They're pretty good at that.
The pops inform it. Yeah, the pops to inform it, but all they care about is like material conditions. And it's like, I'd like it if it was like, the people want you to declare war. The people want you to do this.
They care about racism too now. They care about material conditions and racism.
And
I think they should care about culture as well.
Ideology. Yeah. And they cared about like I'd like it if they cared about like what's the nation doing. They cared about like the spirit of the nation. It's like, are we like a warlike nation? Are we like I'd like it if there was a thing where the people were like, they have obsessions, I guess. So obviously the people are like obsessed with like becoming dominant in some industry. But it's like, if it was like, if there was like a competition between countries to like.
Have you played Morgan? Or you said you don't play mods. Morgan.
I don't play them.
Allows you to compete on like the axis of like arts and science.
That kind of thing would be pretty cool. I bet that's cool in the mod.
I think there would be like if you as part of your culture you could roll like your people being musically oriented and then having composers and beating out other nations' composers would become important, or literature or sports. Like the Olympics were returned. I almost said founded. Shout out to ancient Greece. Were returned during this time period, as far as I remember. Yeah. So like, that's the point I was gonna make. Coming back to it, we were distracted by pizza.
You found it.
But the point is like there's currently like two axes upon players with good taste, which they base their things, which is GDP growth and also SOL. Which of course, the people who are more refined, they focus on GDP growth. But you could also it would be really sweet if you could like do a run focused on culture, where you have to sync your GDP like outcomes in order to get like good culture. which I think would be the case, or like to be able to be good at sports, or to be like good at the sciences in terms of you're known as like the best, most educated nation, like independent of who implements the technologies in their nation better, all the innovation happens here, like in your nation. And so like that would be really cool if like those were other things that you could play for other than GDP or the less tasteful objectives.
What you're advocating for is more metrics by which to measure success.
Yeah.
Which I think is... I've been saying that for a long time. Vic 3 doesn't have very many metrics. And I completely agree. I think it would be really cool, even just to be like the guys that make one product. Like to be like a totally specialized
I want to do an Ottoman run where I make nothing but furniture.
Yeah, Ottoman. Just make Ottomans.
Yep.
Yeah,
this is what I want.
And the thing is, right now, I've talked about it in a lot of my videos. Like every Vic 3 run is an autarky run because how trade works. And obviously, like trade is a whole. We should do another podcast with trade. Okay, that's a whole other topic is trade. But like right now in Vic 3, it's like you can't be a specialized economy. You can't be like a nation that does one thing, or you can't be like you just make GDP and SOL.
Yep.
And it's funny. I'm talking about it like that's so terrible. I've gotten a lot of time out of the game, and genuine time, not just like content creator time. Like I've enjoyed playing the game off stream and like having fun with it with those two measures of success. Yeah. But it would be really interesting. Like, I've been playing some Civ 5 recently. Okay, throwback to Civ 5, and like there's the different victory types of that, and it is fun to be like, this run I'm gonna focus on this and just like totally do that. And obviously in Civ 5 you can just do all of it, or you can do none of it if you're bad at the game. But you can have like your sense of role play and like focusing on one thing. Yeah. Victory 3 you just don't have it. Like again, I keep referencing Chum because the only fucking Victory content creator I like watch.
Well, because he like Chum like actually like
gets creative.
Well, yeah, he gets creative. I was about to say sinks the run for like a narrative.
Yes, he did the like he played as Luca. He played as Luca, and all he made was cars. And like he didn't do shit in the game in terms of like accomplishing anything.
Ferrari.
But he did a Ferrari meme run. He did like I'm gonna build like 100 motor industries and just make cars. And it's like you accomplish nothing. Your GDP like grew a little bit, and you just like joined the British market and sold them cars. Yeah. Like in terms of measuring success within the game, that was a total failure. You ruined your game. But just measuring success outside of the game. Yeah, it's in terms of measuring success outside of the game, though, it was a good video. It was a funny video. He had fun, and it was like enjoyable. I think that Victoria 3 needs ways to make that stuff more internal. This ties back into how RP is so externalized in the game. You got to internalize these things, and CK3 does an amazing job of it. Personally, if you want to talk about what CK3 is amazing. So much internal motivation.
I actually think CK3 is an RPG masquerading as a grand strategy game rather than like correct. Like thinking of it as a grand strategy game because you could world conquest in under a year or something, like in terms of just like if you want to pull all the levers.
You can pull enough levers in CK3 to world conquest in 0 days. Sandwich did that on Reddit. It's a crazy run.
There we go.
It's ridiculous. You can do it without unpausing. You can world conquest. Now that's no fun though. CK3 is not about that life.
No. That's like so like it's not about the levers and the like grand like the any of this. It's like 100% RP, and like I have so much fun every time I play the Morgan Rope mod until like 10 years pass and the game like freezes and like starts chugging like ungodly slow because like that's why the mod is like the mod's just too slow. But like it's like my scientists are coming on up, and then it's like my balloonist is ballooning, and then like I just like hide the balloon events, but because they're all the same. But the idea that like there's another like there's other things you can play into is just like like really
I completely agree. I completely agree that you need to internalize motivation in this game. That's what I think you need to do. Is you need to give more reasons to play it like internally, because it's like your external like imagination can only go so far. Even in CK3, such a strongly internally motivated game, I still find myself doing a lot of the RP in my own head. But the game does a good enough job that I do that as a additive. Like it's like it's a nice. It's like sprinkling on some spice. Like I'm gonna role play a little bit, right? In Victoria 3, if you do no external role play of your own, the game is like a completely nonsensical like mess in terms of like why things are happening. It's like what the fuck, right?
Okay, so here's a question: if you can fix one thing the devs can fix one thing. You can ask them to fix one thing. You can either add a culture system.
Okay.
You can make ideology less important, or rolling specific ideologies less important.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
You can fix warfare, or you can fix the diplomatic play. Which do you request?
It's diplomatic plays. I know it's diplomatic plays. Yeah, unquestionably. To me, anyway. To me, it's a very simple answer. I know people have different priorities. To me, the warfare complaints are a bit overblown. The warfare system is messed up. It's janky, and that's bad. But like fronts can work okay. It's just that it's really janky, and that maybe one day they'll fix it. But to me, it's surprisingly low priority. Like unironically,
that's my attitude. I don't play the game for war.
Diplomatic plays need to be like a more interesting system, because right now, like the game, I talked in when I did my my all my videos that do like reviews of a Victoria 3, like where I talk about the game. I talk about it's a 3-pronged game. It's an economic simulator, a society simulator, and a diplomacy game. But it's not a diplomacy game, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
It's just like not. There's just no diplomacy. It's like you click improve relations till you're at 50, and then you can get away with doing a war, and they probably won't join against you. Even though they might join against you anyway, because fuck you. Okay. Or you exploit it a bit, and you join in one of their wars where they're being like attacked by a random decentralized nation. You join on their side so they can't fight against you, and then you do whatever you want.
Yeah, they need to make it so you could kick someone out of your play. Like
yes, it's so ridiculous.
Because that's like
you can make India go free by just like joining a British play and then timing your play right so you can get them to not defend the Raj. And it's like, what the hell is this, man? This is ridiculous. Like, what are we doing?
Pod racing. That's why it's possible. The India thing specifically is why it's possible to world conquest on any country, basically.
Yeah.
Any country that can gain access to the ocean by 56 or before 56, let's say by 48, basically can world conquest. Because then you just like take chunks of India, and now you're playing India. Like,
yeah, for sure. I mean, I can. It's just diplomatic plays. That's the answer to the question. Other people with different answers are wrong. It's diplomatic plays.
I'm so close to it being culture, just because I've tolerated the diplo play for this long, and I just want the fresh juice, man. I just want the dopamine.
That's a fair statement. But I'm telling you that just because you are used to living in a pile of shit, it doesn't mean the pile of shit's okay.
Right? I would put an asterisk on this in terms of if I was trying to improve the game experience for the new player as much as possible, it would be Diplo play.
Yes.
So, like, if that was I'm just, like... I'm used to being, like, evaluating stuff like, well, I could tick them below 0 without taking anything if I don't put a war goal on them. And, like, that is the craziest, like... unintuitive thing for like a new player to be like, I should not put war goals on someone because otherwise this war will be unwinnable because their ally will stay in the war. I need to just not fight for like 10 years until the ally, or 5 years or whatever, till the ally decays out, and then actually try and fight the war. And this is how you're supposed to do this war.
It's
like,
it's very unintuitive.
It's
very unintuitive, and it's frustrating is the big thing to me. Like the ultimate failure of any game is when it's frustrating, because things can be like difficult and they can make you like upset, or they can be like tough, or they can be like fun, whatever. But when it's frustrating, it's because it feels unfair, or it feels nonsensical, or it feels like these are only negative feelings. But things are difficult, they can feel challenging, and challenging is good. You don't get frustrated by challenge. You get frustrated by like, well, I guess you can if you're a certain kind of person, but I mean, like, usually frustration comes out of a failure to make things feel fair, or to make things feel reasonable. That's where frustration comes from. That's a problem.
Yeah, the most frustrating experience, I think, is still getting your war goal bricked, and that's possible because of how Diplo plays are currently situated.
The most frustrating thing ever is when you're trying to make Egypt a protectorate or some shit, and then they either go to major power status because they started mobilizing and the game prestige, or someone else protectorates them first, and you don't get a refund on your infamy. Okay, I hate it. If you're gonna brick the war goal, at least give me my damn infamy back, okay? But you don't even give me that back.
Do you remember when Suez were first released? You used to be able to. You would try and go for a protectorate, and then they would sway someone to join them by offering protectorate, and it would brick your war goal.
Yeah, you're just done. Yeah.
Now you get a transfer war goal, but like it used to be just like the absolute what are we doing here? And then there's extra war goals on you, so you can't just leave the war. And it's just like you just fight for getting literal nothing.
You fight in order to like just move on from the fact that you gained infamy for nothing. It's awful. Like and that's like
to be fair, that specifically got fixed.
That did get fixed, but there are still other problems. I don't know if you know about this one, Josh. Did you know? Okay, this might be a tip for you in your runs. If someone else is protectorating someone, and let's say it's Dynam or something, and Britain's trying to protectorate them, and you're playing France, and you don't like that Britain's trying to protectorate them, okay? Declare neutrality in that play. Declare your own play to protectorate Dynam, and then get to them first. And now they're your protectorate, and Britain can't transfer them because you're not in that war. Transfer war goals only work on the ruler of that subject. So the war goal will change to transfer, but it won't do anything. And you can cuck the AI so hard, or they can cuck you sometimes.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do it if...
It's horribly frustrating. Yeah. It's the worst feeling when that happens, and it needs to stop.
Yeah.
You know, Filthy Frank with the clock, it's time to stop. Okay, right here.
What the metric is like, do you have a port closer to theirs by a large enough margin that you can land on a different state of theirs first and push them out?
Yes, exactly.
It's like...
I did in my upcoming Japan video. That's exactly what I did to Vietnam. I saw Britain was invading from Siam because they had Siam as a puppet, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I can get to Hanoi faster.
They probably didn't put any troops on the front at the start, and then move them only after the
after the play begins, and they move them exactly. So I was like, okay, I have a chance, and because all the Vietnamese troops were on the front, they weren't defending their HQ.
Yeah.
So then I got Dynam as a protectorate, and I was like laughing. Now, in that moment, it's a great triumph. It feels like you really outwitted the AI, but it is not worth the trade-off that it can happen to you, and it's the worst feeling ever. I have fucking deleted save files and closed games after losing war goals like that before. It's awful. It's so bad.
They've made steps to it, improve it in the sense that the pie thumbing used to be the worst part, and now that's not. Yeah. Because now it's a lot more transparent who's likely to join. But just I think that most players who, when the game was first released, just quit after starting a play. Great Britain joins against them. They reload. Yep. They start a different play. Great Britain joins against them. They reload. Yep. They start another play. Great Britain joins against them. They quit. They're like, okay,
or that crazy shit where it'd be like, I'm gonna a place in Colombia, and the Ottomans join, and it's like, why are you here?
Yeah.
When the AI was a little more schizo about joining every play.
Yeah, the diplomatic catalyst system is just an enormous improvement in terms of AI behavior that I think no one ever talks about, and that maybe was the best for a new player experience, the best thing about 1.7.
Yes.
Because the bells and whistles of the sphere of that's whatever. And also after a certain point, now you just do the exact same thing every time, so it feels like if you do the exact same thing every time, because there's no opportunities for synergistic deviations because all the countries are the same. And so if countries were different, then, and it made it so sometimes you want to go religious bloc, then that would be interesting. But their countries aren't different, so that just makes it so every layer upon which you add a thing, it's just let's...
No, I totally agree. I remember when I did my Sphere of Influence review, I gave that shit a 7 out of 10, even though, which is a pretty okay score in my opinion, but I gave it 7 out of 10. The explicit thing I said was why it's a low score, relatively low compared to what it could have been, is because give it a little bit of time, power blocks are going to be solved, and that's that. It's going to be the least fun. Because I looked at what the power block mandates were, and I was like, none of these are interesting enough that it's not going to be a solved system within a few weeks, maybe in a few days. And that's exactly what happened. It's you either go. So there's still debate over trade league versus sovereign empire. From what I don't think anymore. I think I'm a sovereign empire guy, but I know trade leagues are popular.
Trade league was insane when external trade was really good during the bankroll meta, because just getting bankrolls was just stupid insane, and now bankrolls suck, which makes external trade suck, which makes. And also the internal trade also sucks, so trade league forces you onto a mandate that's not good. So it's just it's sovereign empire only, baby. Unless you're going high in
I have heard some arguments for the ideological union for the purpose of getting your subjects to if you have a lot of subjects, you want to get them on better laws. I've heard that, but that to me is pretty cope. I think that it's sovereign empire for the authority and the transfer, the budget transfer, and then you just get construction and you get advanced research. Maybe that's a maybe. But you get the construction, you get the what am I thinking of, the agriculture, the food research. The food one, advanced, that you just always do that. You never take militarized industry, except if you're trying to get infinitely reduced to good cost, like with China and all that.
Some of those like it changes in like multiplayer, but yeah, I think like you swap out construction 1 for like 1 to 3. But like it's like you swap it out for like the migration one sometimes.
Yes, the migration one. That's what I was thinking. Always migration. You always take that one.
Yeah, like if you're playing China, you probably don't take that.
Yeah,
but
even then though, like bro, I want more pops. I always want more pops. But you're right that you probably have to. China at least has the advantage. Migration's always good for the memes. Always for the memes.
It increases the number, right? So if you're playing China and you're trying to get Han pops to move to Africa, it's still helpful.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Like for that specifically, but like.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like that's.
But point is that the sphere of influence update, there were a lot of sleeper hits, which was the catalyst, and I mentioned catalyst being like a very important change, just because they explain what's going on. Like just that transparency is hugely valuable.
And they don't roll like attitude changes. So like sometimes you would get like a 2%, you'd low roll an attitude change. And someone would just freak out on you for no reason and move antagonistic, but nothing happened, and that doesn't happen anymore.
Exactly. So yeah, I completely agree. Dip my cast for an important change. I don't know though. I'm really curious to see where Paradox goes with the future of Victoria 3 in terms of what they want to do next. I really hope it's diplomatic plays. I think I'm the kind of person where like
they're fixing the military and focusing on trade.
I like to trust the developers when it comes to these games, because I think that if you just like give in to what everyone demands, you're going to end up with like a game that is really unfocused, because people like when in politics in real life, I'm very like for the people. In video game development, I'm not for the people. I'm like, bro, give me a technocracy for the fucking game development. Okay, I trust in the developers to make something good. With CK3, for example, when they did Royal Court, they were very quote-unquote receptive to feedback, and they implemented some changes that I think were detrimental to the game, like the tribal courts. To me, it doesn't make sense for a tribe to have a court. But regardless, that's a whole other topic. Victoria 3, I think they need to like stick to their guns, and I think keep working on the stuff that is like actually important. Because one thing that they probably won't get feedback about is how good the diplomatic catalysts were, and I don't want them to think that didn't matter, because that did matter, but just that it's not a big thing. For example, a lot of people talk about like how much to get foreign investment. If we're being real, foreign investment isn't really that insanely huge of a change, except for when you can invest in your subjects, and that's great and all. But like, it's not that crazy that you can build in someone else's country. I think that was like hyped up because it was like a cool capitalism meme.
Well, like, it lets you not have to annex people to get certain resources.
Yes.
So it opens up a very opens up a play pattern that was not available before, which is subjugating a bunch of people and building in their country.
Yes, and that is good. That is definitely good, but I think there are more important. Like I think, for example, a big change that that actually gets talked about quite a bit, I guess. But like the way subjects were changed to have liberty desire and all that, like that was a very important change.
Yeah, and
like stuff like adding Mappy to the game. Mappy is a mechanic which I think significantly increased the complexity of the economic game.
Yeah,
in the sense of like now it's like, for example, those Mappy rivers are really meaningful, and that's really good. We want to see that. Yeah,
it's silly that ports don't have like an advantage like that, but
true. Yeah, I think that they should do more with Mappy, because right now Mappy's basically traditionalism reduces Mappy, and rivers increase Mappy, and like there's some technologies that increase Mappy. I'd like it if like there were more ways to mess around with Mappy.
Have you seen my freight video?
I've seen the convoy video or the freight. Yeah, sorry. I thought you said trait. I was like, no, freight. I watched a bit of it, but I of course there wasn't enough Subway Surfers on it,
yeah,
so I could.
Fair enough. One of the ideas was you could influence Mappy by building more like infrastructure, and that certain places, certain states would be more conducive to doing that, like any coastal state.
Like I think the developers are a little bit, almost maybe a little scared to make places like the Tarim Basin be like wastelands, where it's like, look, in this era of time, getting goods into like the middle of like the desert is probably going to be hard, and that's just going to have to be how it is. But right now, like to get things from New York or to like fucking Colorado is just as easy. It's like it really shouldn't be. It really should not be. You know, there's local prices. So obviously New York has local access to iron, and that's like fair enough, right? Like I don't know if Colorado has iron, probably not. But Like that's fair, okay. But it really should be the case. Like, yeah, some place like Colorado should have like probably 50% mapping. You know, let's be real here. It really should be
Yeah.
a significantly worse place to live, except for the local produced goods. But I understand the complication of all the calculations for mapping. I guess. I mean, I say I understand it. You probably could do a less nuanced system where it's literally just like every state has a predetermined mappy based on its terrain, and that's that.
A base
But like,
mappy, yeah.
yeah, but like, you know, it really shouldn't be the case that like a place like New York has a similar, even a similar mappy to like Colorado. It should be like Colorado.
Yeah, because you can. It's not like incredibly stupid to like just build in really random states, whereas IRL, like if you were just determined to like make Nevada like well, Nevada's actually the worst example ever because they did that exact thing with like Las Vegas.
But Las Vegas, yeah, they exactly did that. Yeah.
But to
like Dubai, like Dubai exists, like, you know, the fake city they call it, right? Like that can happen, but it's a significant investment.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a massive investment. Yeah, it's a huge investment.
A place where there's an inherent advantage to like building a lot there, where there would be like with the Netherlands, like in their entirety, and like also all the places where there's huge canals in America. Like America's economy developed around those canals, and so and the Mississippi River. So like
I think it'd be reasonable to significantly like nerf the whole world by just being like, yeah, only states that are like urbanized and on the coast and on a river can have good mapping. Everything else is going to have a lot of trouble. Even stuff like West Virginia. West Virginia is not that isolated. But yeah, you shouldn't have as much access to stuff in West Virginia compared to like...
West Virginia actually struggles incredibly because of like the way arable land is. Like
that's what I was migration. That's what fuck
you don't get anyone in West Virginia in terms of migration needs fixing. But
yeah, that's fair. I mean, migration's always kind of a problem. But I mean, even in terms of just, we should see the Appalachians really more destitute because they still are today in a way because of Mappy in today's modern world of Mappy, how it's reflected. But I imagine that effect is only even worse. And what that should incentivize you to do is you have to think, how much do I prioritize the local interests of particular states? Because local prices should always be good in the sense that if you make like a farm in West Virginia, then there's no Mappy issue because it's a local farm. But do you want to invest building in like some fuck off, who cares state to make them more prosperous? Or you can build in New York where the Mappy is really high and it helps the whole economy. That would be an interesting like inflection point for decisions about like whether you want to do a more global economy or a more local economy. The problem is right now I think you would just always pick the global option. I don't think there's really much incentive to ever build like to just prioritize like your local states.
The anti-global kind of position is more on how extractive so you can have local in a sense of a national local versus a global as in like colonial global, and like the extent is like there were a lot of like protectionist efforts on the part of the countries that industrialized after Great Britain to keep British goods out of their market so that they could actually industrialize. And they were very inward facing, and so they had a type of infrastructure that was like more railroad oriented than like shipping oriented. That like lended to transporting stuff like domestically. But that's like that's a national level like inward focus, not a state level like inward focus.
Oh yeah, no, I totally understand. Like I don't even necessarily know perfect nuance of it would look like. Maybe you can even make railways give Mappy, like in the sense that you could actually fix up someplace like Colorado by connecting it to your market capital, maybe through railways. You could do something like that.
That's part of what I proposed in the freight video.
Yeah. But my point about it is just that like there needs to be more of a consequence for being like an being a bad terrain state.
Yeah.
Like, you know, because I'll speak about Canada. This is also true for the America, I assume too. But in Canada, getting the railway from Ottawa to BC completely changed everything when it came to BC. Before the railway, BC was like people like panning for gold. After the railway, we are now like one of the biggest like trade hubs in the world because we have connection to the rest of the country, right? That should be way more important in terms of the game. Is like, California is a really good state in Big Three, but if you don't have a connection to your market capital, it should be like a bad state because it's got like a lot of mountains and it's got like no connection to anything. Like it's like really distant and far away. Like that connection to your market capital should really matter a lot
Well,
more than it currently does.
California
But right
like
now,
became its own like market capital like
yeah, true.
historically.
It did, yeah.
That's like how that
True.
like so it became less about connecting to the home hub instead it was like becoming its own hub, which is
I guess
like,
then you have the two solutions to the problem is either make a self-sufficient, which is the California solution, or the BC solution, which is you connect to the east, and that makes you
both work.
connect. Yeah, either one works fine, but like that would to me be a nice way to add nuance to your economic building and even RP, because you can have like the role play of like giving statehood. Like in American history, like Utah becomes a state on the back of the American military building railways to Utah, like connecting it to the country.
Yeah,
right? That's how like Utah kind of becomes a state in American history, alongside like stealing land from natives, but whatever. Like it's through
it's not unique to Utah, but
exactly, yeah, exactly. It's through the incorporation of that state by connecting it to the larger nation that you kind of create like that's now part of the country. And Mappy, it should be a reflection of how much that state is part of the nation. Because if it's not economically connected, it's not really connected at all. That's the logic behind like the Western railways in Canada. It's like, is BC even really part of Canada if they're not participating in the Canadian economy?
Yeah.
Like, well, no. Because at the time, BC was just like a local economy of like gold and like logging, and like that was it. Even the logging wasn't that much, because who are you gonna sell it to?
It's gold and subsistence.
Exactly, yeah, that's all it was. It was gold, and then you use the gold to like maybe buy a couple of things, but other than that, you're just living in the West. Like BC is like our Wild West, right? So people were just living off the land and stuff, and they were getting gold and getting rich, and then going back home. You get your gold, you make your money, then you go back home would be the idea, right? So it's like, this would give a lot of role play, a lot of internal like motivation to role play about connecting up your country.
I think that like also having front loaded really expensive infrastructure ideas and having that form like a story of like what you're focusing on, and then eventually watching that come to fruition in terms of like an internal like narrative style cycle of a story that you're telling yourself while you're playing would help out so much. Like right now you just like slowly pull the economies up everywhere, and there's no like large scale effort, I'm going to do this thing, other than pushing economies of scale kind of where you're like, oh, I'm gonna 51 this, but like, or 50 it. God, my brain is like it's still like, I'm so used to saying 51ing a building that I just can't stop because they changed it.
No, I mean, dude, these are all like, I love all the ideas, and this happens to me in CK3. I'm good enough at mod. Sometimes I stab at putting in the game. I think that with Victoria 3, I will say my experience doing very minor mods for it, it's a lot harder to mod than CK3 is, just because of the way that things are like coded. But the map, the thing is that, remember we talked about interconnect systems in Vic 3? If you have like one good idea for Vic 3, you have to alter the whole game to accommodate it. Because let's say that we put in this like mappy thing, like, all these mountain estates now have like 40% base mappy. Well, this radically alters like the entire game, because like everything is different now. Because let's say you're playing as Austria and you like to build your iron mines in Carpathia, because where the good iron mines are. Well, Carpathia is a mountain, and it's not very accessible, and famously quite isolated, So you're gonna have like a bunch of iron. You're gonna completely change the meta. So it's like, that's the problem with Vic 3 mod compared to CK3 mod. In CK3, it's very easy to add in like one thing, and it won't really affect the whole game, because the systems aren't super connected. In Vic 3 though, every change has to be a whole overhaul of the game, and that makes it really hard to make changes. So I understand the developer's problem, because these ideas are really easy to say, and then it's like, now go do it, and it's like, oh god, everything is changed, like, oh no, like everything has been affected. It's awful. So I get it. I think people don't realize, sometimes people make suggestions on the forums and stuff, and it's like, dude, you don't understand how much you're going to change the whole game if you do this. I can't think of concrete examples, but there are a lot of them on the forums.
I mean, there are a lot of interesting suggestions on forums and the Reddit. Like, if someone has I don't know, maybe this is a little bit like elitist, but if someone has like under 100 hours on the game, like, I just don't want to hear what your suggestion is.
Like I said, when it comes to game development, I am the not the crack technocracy type person. Okay,
you're
fuck the popular opinion. Fuck the popular opinion. Okay, when it comes to video game development, okay, I don't care about that. In this case. I'm elitist.
Here's the in terms of like the elitist question, I actually also think my opinion is probably worth substantially less than a player who has 1,000 hours in the game. Because I think the level of hours is oversaturated for me to the extent that novelty is like more important to me than like a good system, like in terms of like me enjoying the game, or like a good system improvement. I actually thought 1.8 was a really, really good patch. I know a lot of other content creators hated it, but I thought it like improved systems a lot. But there wasn't a lot of novelty to like sink your teeth into. In terms of developers' perspective, it was a bad patch. Like the bump on it wasn't very big, but like I also think that like the number of hours a lot of the devs have is like smaller than like content creators because they
I think that Paradox made a well, I say Paradox, I don't know if it's like a decision, whoever it is to blame. It's a big mistake to not play the game a lot. I will say that this could be like a false memory because when I played CK2 I was like fucking 12, so I was a bit young, right? I remember when I was like 12, the CK2 devs were some of the best players of CK2. They weren't the best. That was the content creators, like Arumba and stuff.
But like,
the best players.
You couldn't possibly play as much as
work on the CK. I'll speak on CK3 dev because I followed the Victoria 3. CK3 devs fucking suck at CK3. I'm sorry. Okay, if they see this, I'm sorry to say. You guys suck at the game.
That's gonna be the title.
Okay? yeah. I assume Big 3 is probably similar. I think EU4 devs are good at the game, though. I've heard that EU4 devs are good at the game, but that's a much older game. CK3 devs suck at the game. Vic 3 devs don't understand the game very well. I remember giving some feedback about like Vic 3, like when it came to Austria and Prussia, where the devs, to me anyway, kind of live in delusion about the relationship between Prussia and Austria. Austria fucking mogs Prussia like in almost every game, and it shouldn't be like that. It just shouldn't be like that. And I will say that like, you know, when I sent them like an unlisted YouTube video of me just like beating the UK and Prussia as Austria, as like, look at how good defensive is. Defensive is too good, and they just like didn't say anything to it, and I was like, okay, I see how it is. But regardless, I understand that like, I have like 1,400 hours. I'm not the average player. Average player is probably going to not have this experience.
Well, but like, to be fair, you could probably wax Austria and Great Britain as Prussia too.
Yeah, if you know what you're doing, right? Yeah. But the thing is that in terms of the AI, the AI doesn't do a good job. The Prussian AI, at least in my experience, makes a German empire like maybe every like third game. It should really be like every third game they don't make the empire, maybe is what it should be. I feel like the empire coming about should probably be the common experience. But right now, like the common experience is Prussia remains fractured for the whole game. Yeah. And it's like, okay, I think the devs probably would have a better understanding of that flaw if they played the game more. But I think they don't really play it much. Which, to be fair, these games are long and big games. It's hard to be like, just QA, just get in there and play a 20-hour fucking playthrough and tell me what you think.
To some extent, I think the design flaw, or like, I think QA just isn't what it was like 10 years ago, and 10 years ago it wasn't what it was 20 years ago, just because the way games are rolled out now. You used to, before the internet and live updates of games, you used to actually have to roll out a complete game that was going to stand on its own, because they were going to be printed on discs, and they were never going to be updated ever, and that was just the game. And then occasionally there would be hot fixes or patches that you could download, but there wasn't live support, so you'd actually actively
or you do like expansions. You remember like Warcraft 3, you get like the expansion, get a new disc, and like and the new disc is like completely different from the first one. You're like, holy shit, they totally changed the game. Like they have to like completely like I agree with you completely. Paradox gutted the QA on these games, man. There's like no QA. We're the QA, you and me.
That's right. That's what it is, because they give early access to content creators, and then they'll just like, we'll fix the things as they come, which actually might be better, because like the amount of people they have to hire is significantly less. So I'm not sure I'm upset about it. It just like completely changes like the nature of the thing. I'm not saying they have to fix it. I'm saying it's a consequence of the choice to make the content creators be the QA, is that we're not actually QA people. So, for example, when I come across a problem, I don't always know how to exactly explain it. I'm going to complain about things that are annoying to me, not complain about things that are annoying to a person who has 100 hours in the game. Yeah, it's really hard to... I don't know, there's a chess quote, since you like chess. There's a chess quote, I forget who, but it's something like,
it's something like just as the master can't see the board how the novice can't see the board as the master, or maybe reverse that. But it's like once you're good at the game, you can't unsee the game. Like,
you can't forget what it's like to
So if you're getting me to do QA for a game where the priority of the game is to appeal to like the relatively beginner player, because that's what most people are, is they're maybe have like 100 hours. That's or most people are going to have like 10 hours.
Those are the people who they want to have a good experience.
Exactly. So if you're asking me for advice, I'm like, dog, my issues are going to be like these crazy niche like company issues, which most people aren't going to care about. I try to tailor my critiques to what the average person's going to have, but you're asking a lot of me, and I'm not a QA guy. I'm just a YouTuber, so it's hard for me to say.
We both complained about companies.
I remember that, joint complaint.
Yeah.
I think they did a pretty good job. Honestly,
they fixed up the issues within a few days. But they started cooking on it I think or the dev, I won't say his name because I don't know if he wants to be mentioned. But he said he was starting to work on it immediately. But companies were so much worse in the version that we received of the game.
And then they did fix it up, and I was happy to see that. I think they I think when I first put up the critique, I felt a little bit like they were not they were kind of almost ignoring it a little bit, but then I think that maybe I just misread it because they ended up implementing a lot of what I thought was a good change. And the big one was prioritizing building up the company in one state. I told them, I was like, listen, having level 1 company in every state is maybe even more meta, but it's less fun. You got to have people love to see the one big 100 opium fields, 95 of them owned by a company, even if that's less effective than having a little bit of company across the whole thing. It's more fun. The average player is going to love it a lot more.
Watching the entire thing be 2 stacks everywhere was crazy.
Yeah, that was
company builds one level,
actually better.
Probably better for GDP.
Exactly. It was probably better for GDP to do that, but it's not as fun. I told them it's not, but it's about fun, okay? And it's way more fun to have massive company stack in one state. And I'm glad they did it. It was a great change.
They made it so companies actually get a decent market share as well. That was my primary objection was functionally there was no edge for the company, and if there's no edge for the company, they never really acquire market share, and they would just have 5 or 10% of the overall market share and never really penetrate.
And they're less impactful that way, whereas I think you want them to be impactful.
Yeah,
companies are one of the few kind of specializations you can do in the game. It's I can specialize my country through companies, but they have to be impactful. And if not impactful, then you lose that, right?
The meta on the early release or the version that we got was you completely ignore what industries the company is in, and you only grab prosperity bonus, and that's the only thing you cared about.
Yeah, and that was lame.
That was lame. I was not.
Now companies are sick.
Now companies
I
are fine. I think I prefer 1.7 companies, but just because it felt I prefer 1.7 companies because the math is not funny on the reinvestment. I don't because right now they use funny math so that they acquire market share. And
they have to skew the game to make the companies work properly. Which maybe eventually they'll revisit it, but I'm okay with a janky fix if it makes the game more fun.
They kind of need to separate buildings, and they don't want to do that because that causes more calculations.
Yeah, performance is a big concern for sure. Performance is a huge concern, and I understand it completely. And I think it should be a concern. I don't want the game to become a total slog because that's the worst.
Yeah. So I think we just reached over 3 hours, so we can keep talking, but I think we're gonna cut off here. Do you have any other final thing to add on to your final thoughts?
I've already said that these are my thoughts at least 3 times now. I think.
Yeah. No, so this is
to conclude the concluding thoughts. Victoria 3 is game which needs narrative to it, and also they should do that, but the game is complicated, so making changes is hard. And I don't smoke a lot of copium. It's the dev's job I said it's hard. That doesn't mean the devs shouldn't do it. The devs got to figure something out. That's up to them. They're getting paid to do this, okay? It's their job to figure out how to make these changes such that they can not destroy the interconnected web of the game mechanics. But I sympathize with the difficulty as someone who has worked on some mods. I'm not a big modder, but working on some mods, I'm I get it. Yeah, this shit's complicated, but you're getting paid. You're getting paid to do this. Okay, to do
a lot of a lot of CK content is an overlay onto something, not a rewrite of the entire system. And
Exactly.
Vic 3 with their sandbox philosophy, when they do content, they have to rewrite entire systems.
Exactly. Vic 3 is stuck between a rock and a hard place, where it's like you could maybe make the game less sandboxy, but then it loses some of its appeal, or you keep it sandboxy, but then like holy shit, bro, like every change completely destroys the game.
I'm not sure I like the sandboxy design philosophy, but I like the systems-focused design philosophy.
Yes.
Which is part of it. Anyways, I'm going to click stop recording, so if you like
Bye,
this video,
bye-bye.
feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube algorithm thing, answer the pizza question that was before, and other than that, have a good day.